What are we? Some kind of Suicide Squad?
Oh, I thought you were gonna... Are we 7 samurai?
It's an alliteration either way. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Critically Acclaimed, the podcast where highbrow and lowbrow collide. There was an explosion.
Which we added in post, so it's really kind of silly when we record it live.
It's always dumb. Like, people are like, oh, you should show this live. I'm like, we don't have an actual explosion. It would just be Gus going, oh.
We don't... Just in case, I'm sorry to shatter the illusion and let you a little bit know about how the sausage is made here, but yeah, we don't actually blow up trucks every episode. I wish we could. If it was in our budget, we'd totally do it.
It was only the first time, and then we've just been reusing the sound effect ever since.
If we had the budget, we would pull a Wendy O. Williams in this every week, and we'd get on top of a speeding school bus, and we'd drive through a wall of television sets every single week.
Yeah, who wouldn't? I've been doing that. Hey, you want to do this every week? Yes. This week on
let's introduce ourselves.
Oh, yeah, that's right. My name is William Bibbiani. I'm a film critic for the internet, and everybody calls me Bibbs.
My name is Witney Seibold, Ibid.
Okay.
But people don't call me Bibbs.
Okay. Ibid? Just throw out an Ibid. No one says Ibid.
I'm pronouncing the abbreviation you see.
Fine. Anyway, this week on Critically Acclaimed, we got some stuff going on. We got some new movie reviews of films like Ready Player One and Tyler Perry's Acrimony and Gemini?
Gemini.
Okay, I only saw one of those.
Oh,
I was
okay.
gonna go see God's Not Dead, but it turns out...
it was playing at one theater way out in BFE. So
I was totally going to go, and I still want to see it, and I will see it, but it just didn't work out in time. I apologize for that. I know some people were actually super excited, like, ooh!
Because you've seen the previous two.
But now that there are 3 of them, maybe we could do the whole franchise sometime. There you go. That'll be a blast, won't it? So we got that going on for us, and because it is April, it's April Fool's Month. We're flipping the script. Whereas normally every week you pick a bad movie or at least a notorious movie, and then we pick a classic movie to match it. Throughout the month of April, we're doing the exact opposite, and you're picking the classic films.
And then we get to inflict pain on ourselves by choosing the crappy B feature.
You know, you gave us like one of the best movies ever made, and I thank you for that. That was a real treat.
The poll was nothing but some of the best movies ever made.
That's true. My point is that it was still nice. Like, it was great. I love every movie that was on that list. You picked one of my favorites. That's great. But we got to choose the bad movie, and I had an idea, and then you had a worse idea, and you insisted on it.
And we went on with the worse idea.
I'm mad at you for doing that. I was like, I texted you. I'm like, we're picking the bad movie. We don't have to do this.
If you had the bad idea, and if you tantalize me with a bad idea, it is only going to be my instinct to make it worse. It's just in my nature, I suppose.
Anyway, so that's coming up later.
Yeah.
But first, let's get on our big movie reviews of the week, and the big movie coming out this weekend. It's huge. It's expensive. It's from one of the most legendary filmmakers of all time, and boy, do I have mixed feelings about Ready Player One. Mm-hmm. What is Ready Player One, Whitney?
Ready Player One is based on a kind of notorious cult novel by Ernest Cline that is highly beloved and highly derided by separate segments of the pop culture community.
It's super love it or hate it.
Yeah,
like, people just think it's a really neat, like, sort of ode to nostalgic pop culture, or people say that it kind of celebrates it to the extent that it embraces all of the shallow bullshit that has come from that superficial appreciation of pop culture. And I can see both sides. I haven't read it. Have you read it?
I have not read the book. I've read portions of it out of context, and the portions of it I've read make the book seem terrible. So people could just be picking out the worst portions of it. But there are pages and pages and pages that I've seen in Ready Player One that are just a litany of cool pop culture stuff.
Yeah,
it's just a listicle. It's like it is finally maybe the first piece of published literature that codifies more or less the geek canon. The films and the comics and the TV shows that are just sort of accepted as being the most important for geek consumption.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we had Clerks. Well, we had the works of Kevin Smith. We had the works of Quentin Tarantino. We had all of these.
Tarantino goes into the 70s. He has his sort of own canon of kind of grindhouse stuff that he sort of elbowed his way into the canon. Okay. See, he came in from the outside, and then the geek community canonized him afterwards.
That's true. There's a lot of people who like love stuff that Tarantino has referenced without having seen the stuff Tarantino's referenced.
Yeah,
ooh, it's the whistling from Twisted Nerve. You haven't seen Twisted Nerve. I'm not trying to
This looks like that scene from Lady Snowblood, which I haven't seen.
Yeah, you read that it's Lady Snow. Listen, some of you have seen it, and if you have, awesome.
Lady Snowblood is great.
I love Lady Snowblood. Those are awesome movies, but it's just like he raised awareness of things, but not everyone actually sought them out, which is kind of frustrating.
Whereas Kevin Smith was actually bringing that type of voice to cinema for the first time, so he was also doing something kind of novel.
Yeah, when you look at Clerks, and I think it's really relevant. When you look at Clerks was a story about 90s losers who were clerks. They were just convenience store and video store lackeys, and they had aimless lives, and
they had no ambition whatsoever.
And they all of the things that they wanted to talk about were either their stupid relationship problems, most of which were their fault.
Yeah.
Or they wanted to talk about shit like Star Wars. And it's interesting watching it now as opposed to watching it then, because initially that whole speech about, there were all of these independent contractors on the Death Star, right? I mean, clearly stormtroopers won't installing a toilet main, and they go on and on about this for a ridiculous length of time.
And it's in 1994. That's hilarious.
It was hilarious. It's a funny speech, a funny scene. But B, the gag is that they were overthinking it, and this is what they have instead of culture.
Yeah.
Now, all of that irony has been stripped away, and this actually is culture. And that's not the worst thing ever, but it leads this sort of shallow, this shallow pool on which we have to actually draw from, where to the extent that simply showing like a character from a movie feels like an important literary reference, and it's not. You just took an image and put it in the thing.
The pool has gotten a lot wider, but it has not gotten any deeper in sort of the pop culture lake. And what Ready Player One highlights, it's a shallow film to match that notion.
Oh yeah,
there's
from top down.
There's not much thought in its head, and
I think there's some interesting sort of meta narratives we can get into, and I want to talk about them. But if you just look at the construct of the plot and the themes that it explores or attempts to even touch upon, really straightforward.
Yeah, in fact, here's the plot: a young white man. It's the future, and he has access to an advanced video game. He's not seen doing anything else. He doesn't go to school. He doesn't have a job. He plays a video game.
Yep.
It's implied maybe that this video game is also a job, and you can get real things from playing it.
Yeah.
But that's unclear.
Video game currency can be used to buy stuff in the real world. That's something that they do show happening.
Yeah. He wants to beat the game, and if he beats the game, he wins the game and $1 million.
Oh no, he wins $500 billion.
Or $500 billion. He wins $1 billion.
Yeah, functionally.
He wins a game and he gets $1 billion.
Yeah.
And he learns a lot of 80s pop culture trivia.
Yep.
And he wins the game and he gets $1 bazillion the end.
Okay.
Also, he gets laid.
Okay, before you start crying foul and spoilers, you know how this ends. This is like saying John McClane lives at the end of a Die Hard movie. You know he lives.
This
is not a movie where everything horrible happens, and we're not going to spoil every cool thing that happens in the movie, because here's the thing. Although I honestly I was sort of slack-jawed at just how rote the story is. ROTE, not written, but just oh my god, just barely there.
Pablum.
The narrative is. Ready Player One, it takes place mostly in this CGI world where really anything is theoretically possible. Everyone looks like whoever they want to look. A lot of people look like pop culture characters. I buy that. It's pandering, but I buy that that's a thing. I totally do.
It's odd, however, though, that it is a very particular type of pop culture character.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of, every once in a while you'll see, a Sanrio or some other, like a Hello Kitty or some other sort of odd character, but you never see, Tom Hulse and Amadeus. There's no one with any class involved in this. All
also,
it's weird.
There is sex in this universe, and we have a libidinous teenage boy, and they never even talk about going into like the X-rated world.
They pass by the X-rated world.
No, he'd go in there.
No. In the beginning of the movie, they're doing like this virtual tour of this place called Oasis, and it's like, oh, and here's the Sergio.
The cat just fell off the coffee table. That's hilarious.
Sure. All right.
Cat. I would choose to be a cat that falls off of things.
Of course. But like they take you on a path and they show like, oh, here's like this crazy like 360-degree golfing world where you can golf anywhere and anything, and here's the casino world, and here's the world where people go for love, and then it's like he's uncomfortable talking about human sexuality, which I kind of buy, but no, we have this whole like crazy world with all of these crazy references, and there's a lot of sequences in it that are like, huge, ridiculous car chases where Godzilla is chasing the DeLorean from Back to the Future.
It's a Tyrannosaurus and King Kong are chasing.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah. All of that stuff is like really vivid, and Spielberg's obviously having a blast bringing it to life. So like, there's all of this kind of incredible filmmaking going on in service of a story that barely exists. And kind of isn't really about much.
It's like aggressively not about much, to the point of being really obnoxious and kind of irresponsible in a lot of ways.
Yeah, because this is an opportunity, if you think about it. The movie takes place in like the 2040s, and it's about sort of digging into, because the gag is this: the creator of Oasis.
It's played by Mark Rylance in flashbacks.
Mark Rylance is always great. He was this very, emotionally isolated guy who was afraid of living in the real world, so he created a perfect fantasy world out of all of the various escapist fantasies that he enjoyed as a child growing up in the films of, say, Steven Spielberg. Okay, so what you've got...
That he only references one of his own... I guess he produced Back to the Future.
He produced a lot of the stuff that we see, but he only directly references one or two. He said that would be like too distracting. And I get it. Yeah. I do. It's weird that Indiana Jones didn't show up in the huge war. I feel like someone would want to be Indiana Jones, but whatever. You should have thrown Mutt in there from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like, only Mutt. Like, that's the only Shia LaBeouf. That's like the only Spielberg reference.
Or Ivana Spalko or whatever her name was.
Yeah, that would have been really funny. I would have really, really liked that. But he has, he died, and he's created like this big scavenger hunt, and whoever wins the scavenger hunt, like it's a mad, 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 mad world, they will win the game, and they'll win $500 billion, and they'll get everything they ever wanted. And it's a golden ticket. There you go.
Well, and it taps into a very real... if I could stop you for a second.
I was going somewhere.
Okay, go. No, please. Okay,
please just to finish my thought.
Sorry.
Okay, just to finish my thought. So what we have here is that in order to solve the scavenger hunt, they have to not only like follow clues, but they have to actually tap into the biography of the author of this game.
Yeah.
They have to, in order to understand the text, they have to understand the biography of the author. And there's actually like, you could have had a really interesting conversation about the way that art changes the more we understand the people who make it. And coming from someone like Steven Spielberg, who maybe didn't invent blockbuster cinema, but really helped codify how we look at this kind of escapist entertainment for an entire generation, that kind of self-reflexivity could have given him, even with a limp storyline, a lot of leeway to tell some very interesting stories or to explore some very interesting ideas about the relationship between art and the artist and the audience. And boy, does he not do that. At all. It was right there.
He not only does he whiff that, but the place of the Oasis in this world is it's just something people do. It's not necessarily anybody's... Like, I'm not really clear onto how much of a livelihood it is for people. We just are informed in dialogue and through a few visual cues that the world is just horrible now.
Yeah.
But skies are still really clear. Things are littered in a big city, and everybody's sort of crowded and close together, but... the world doesn't seem so awful that you need to constantly live in this like really wild fantasy world.
Well, the one thing that they do have is that there are, and I wish they'd gone into this more, because in an attempt to make it seem like dying in the game matters, if you die in the game even once, it's not like you have a number of lives like in Mario or old school Mario, for example. It's if you die in the game, you lose everything you've ever collected. Your money, your stuff, everything.
But that's just in the game.
And here's my point.
You just have to start the game over.
Yeah, well, here's the problem is that some people like talk about like, look, I've been working for 10 years. I've got all this stuff. I can't afford to die. Okay, well, I see what you're going here. And they try to sell it in this early moment where people are so invested in it that someone actually tries to kill themselves because they die. I have a couple of problems with that. I see what you're getting at. You're trying to make it seem like dying in the game has consequences, so that
in real life,
so that when the action scenes happen, it matters if a character dies.
Right.
You know, the human won't die, but there are consequences. And, like, I see what you're getting at here. Problem is that it's not very well defined. Just how bad, just how much of a dock on your salary are you losing here? And the other problem is that that's not a fun game. Because
if you die in the game, you lose it.
You lose like all this stuff. People are here's the thing. People play these kinds of massive multiplayer online games. A lot of them are collectors. They want all this stuff. They want to brag about this stuff. So having a system in which they can easily lose all that stuff at any time is terrible game design. And I don't think people would want to do it because here's the thing. As we see throughout the game, you can die anywhere. You can be on a dance world where it's just like the bar from Saturday Night Fever, and you can get shot and die.
A gunfight breaks out unexpectedly.
I thought we were going to find out that there are specific planets that you go to because they're all on planets. Like there's specific, here's the Doom planet.
There is a war world, but you don't necessarily have to go to the war world.
Yeah, you go to that war world, boom, everything is player versus player. But like if you're on a dance planet, you don't want to be able to die. That's shitty design.
A little comment about the dance planet. There's a bit where our main character Parzival inside the game. Like magically makes the white suit from Saturday Night Fever appear and like makes the magic light up floor appear below him. His dance partner Artemis says, "Wow, old school." It's all old school. He was just dressed as Buckaroo Banzai a moment ago.
That's only a few years after.
That's like about like 9 years later. It's like they're both old school.
And by the way, this is the 2040s.
This is 2040s. This is all old school.
This would be like if someone
to them that's the same year.
This would be like if someone put on like a song from the 1950s and then someone put on a song from 1949 and everyone like, whoa,
taking it way back now.
Like those are all okay.
This whole setup about taking the game so seriously that if you lose in the game, you feel like you want to kill yourself. And Werner Herzog has a really great interview with some people in his film Lo and Behold, Reveries of the Connected World. Yeah.
Great documentary about pretty much everything involving the internet.
The internet. And he does interview some young people who were so involved in their online games that they were contemplating suicide and they could never leave and they were starving themselves so they could not ever have to give up.
And now for the sake of their own mental health, they have isolated themselves from the internet.
They've gone to such a remote location that Wi-Fi is just not even possible there and tech is not allowed. And had there been some sort of dark commentary on sort of the way people have become so obsessed with games that it's more important than real life, that would also have been something. For Spielberg, like this game is so exciting, and we're looking at the past so much that Spielberg had an opportunity to look at sort of the harmful effects of nostalgia and the harmful effects of playing too many video games.
Yeah.
And indeed, later on in the movie, there's some talk about how important it is to play the game, but also interact in real life, and it's just lip service.
It is, because here's the thing, like they talk about like, oh, listen, well, we've all learned that video games are nice, but we have to like enjoy the real world. There's a moment where our protagonist, played by Ty Sheridan, he's out of the game, and he is hanging out. Is it Olivia Cook who's plays Artemis?
Let me look
that up, please. But they're out in the real world, and just it's the action is slowed down. The lighting is very different. You can feel the wind through their hair. Nothing is going on.
It's shot on location for one.
Well, that's my point. Is like it's just all of a sudden. But my point is they film it.
It is Olivia Cook.
Yeah, they just film it kind of slow. And he just says, everything's so slow here.
Yeah.
And you can tell he's kind of appreciating it. Like, wow, this is actually really refreshing. And there's a moment like that. But what it boils down to really is you got to realize I think people get confused sometimes. I think people think there's only two layers to a movie. There's the text, which is what it says it is. Then there's the subtext, which is usually the thematic content.
What it's really about.
But there's also the functionality. And I think that doesn't get enough talk enough because Ready Player One, on its surface, is about a video gamer who goes into a video game and wins the video game. That's just what it's about. The subtext is what it's trying to kind of get at and what it's hinting at in the text, which is in this
context weak at best.
But here's what they're trying to say is like, listen, the real world is also really important too. But then does how the story actually function support the subtext? And it does not.
No.
Because ultimately, as he goes off and solves all these clues, does all these little mini games in order to win the Oasis, he never has to go to the real world.
And indeed,
winning the Oasis does not involve the real world.
Yeah, he goes into the Oasis, he finds a clue, he gets widget number 1.
Yeah.
And then he gets widget number 2. There's 3 widgets.
Yeah.
And then there's talk about how widget number 3 has something to do with the real world, and the assumption is going to be you have to leave the game.
That would be
and actually meet somebody and talk, actually live for a year and get a real job or something.
That might be. I don't know if that's fun,
well,
but the assumption would be like that's the arc is growing up and growing out of the Oasis and realizing that the Oasis, though fun, is not fulfilling or satisfying.
It is just distraction,
which would have supported the film's argument that real life is significant, and instead the functionality of the story, the way the story actually works, functions the idea that real world isn't that great. It's really not. Like, there's really nothing in it. Ultimately, he wins the real world the way he wins the game. It's just this superficial reward system. It's trophies.
He goes into, and also the plot doesn't make any sense when you think about it. No. He goes into the game, and the creator says, "I've hidden these Easter eggs, and if you do it, you'll get the company." How? Like, who has it now? Who's earning money from the Oasis?
Someone has to actually be running.
Somebody owns it. It belongs to somebody, and because the creator hid something in the game that says you win the game if you beat it, that doesn't mean the corporate masters are going to give it to you. There's no reason for that to actually happen.
Well, if it's in his will and testament that he actually owns those shares, that actually could make sense. But here's the thing with.
But he died many years ago. Who has the shares now?
That's the thing. The antagonist of the story is played by Ben Mendelsohn. Great villain. He's become our new Gary Oldman. He just always plays the villain. He's always good at it. I like him as an actor. He plays the CEO or the president or whatever of another company who is trying to win the game in order to get those shares. Here's the problem. He should be the head of the Oasis company, who doesn't own it and is only a caretaker, and they need, in order to keep their company going and to finally run it the way they want, they actually that would make more sense.
I thought he did own the Oasis.
I don't think he does.
Oh, I was so unclear on. Yeah, he runs a company.
The movie makes it seem like he's a rival company, and he can own the Oasis now.
What I like is that Mark Rylance, who plays the creator, is the Steve Jobs of the story. He's the benevolent tech guru who's a little bit of a nerd, but he's such a visionary that he knows the world needs this.
And people kind of worship the ground he walks on.
People kind of elevate him. Ben Mendelsohn plays the Steve Jobs, where the evil, corporate, money-hungry, really aggressive, angry Steve Jobs. So
the other side
of Steve Jobs. And I think had the hero and those two characters been drawn as parallels, that would have been something to at least contemplate. The bad guy...
Yeah.
Now, he commits murder in this film, but that is not depicted as being as bad as his evil scheme to sell ad space in the Oasis.
Yeah, his whole thing is we can put ad space in people's virtual reality visors and cover up 80% of the screen before people start having seizures. Yeah. That's his evil.
And you know he's evil because he's a poseur. He's not a real geek.
There's a moment
he has to hire other geeks to feed him info.
There's a scene where he's talking to Parzival, Ty Sheridan's character, who has found the first key, and the key is the first clue. And he's trying to convince him to work for him, give him the company. This is the path of least resistance. I give you millions of dollars. That's functionally good enough for you. We both get what we want, yada, yada, yada. And Parzival tests him by misquoting like pop
John
culture.
Hughes movie.
Yeah, he says John Hughes directed Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Animal House, and like there's a nerd on his ear. It's like that's a trick question. John Hughes didn't direct those. Like that was Amy Heckerling and John Landis. Don't do it. As funny as that is, like in a vacuum, it's just not that interesting. And you realize there's so many more efficient ways that could have told a story that would have meant more. We find out that Ben Mendelsohn was Mark Rylance's intern once, but we also see that he has a partner who got shut out of the company, played by Simon Pegg in flashbacks, who really, there's no reason why Simon Pegg couldn't have been Ben Mendelsohn. Like, the connection would have been stronger, and it really would have made everything a lot more emotionally intense. It's really bizarre.
Or there would have been
that they made the weakest choice.
Some sort of thematic underpinning. I have to go to The Last Starfighter, which was one
of the example of the
the example of this story about a young boy in a remote town. They have an arcade cabinet, The Last Starfighter, and he gets really good at that arcade game, but he has really nothing else in his life. All he is good at a video game, and he realizes that's not much to go on.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Everyone's like, when are you going to grow up?
Yeah,
and then
he's a hero to like the 8-year-olds in his town, but that's about it.
Yeah, we know he's a slacker, but then he beats the arcade game, and it's a big moment. Actually, even everyone's just like, holy shit, he beat the game. That's actually a really hard game. Good for him. And then an alien lands and says, congratulations, you won our training simulator. Now you're part of the Intergalactic Armada Resistance Fighting Force. And he's like, what?
And now this, for somebody who's really addicted to arcade cabinets, and that's all they have in their lives, that's a good wish fulfillment.
Oh, it's a great wish fulfillment fantasy.
When you're getting good at a video game, you're acquiring an actual applicable life skill.
Yeah, there's a couple
that it can actually not only be applicable, but heroic.
There's a couple of really good films like that in the 80s. The other one I think of in particular is The Monster Squad.
Yeah, knowing about monster movies makes you a hero.
And I love both of those movies. I think they're just well-written, good movies, but I mean they're sci-fi B movies, but they're very well written for what they are. But when I was a kid, and we were part of the last generation where our parents were actively encouraging us to not read comic books when we grew up, or stop playing video games when he became a teenager, because that wasn't mature. Like, nowadays everyone does it when they're an adult and no one gives a shit. But like, those were movies that sort of helped inspire me to say, hey, listen, not only does the narrative of this movie support the idea that the stuff you care about as a child has value, at least in some context, but the existence of the movie supports that too, because people obviously loved these things, and now they have careers making these movies. That's great.
Here's the problem with Ready Player One. It ostensibly is that same sort of fantasy. If you get good enough at this game, you will be rewarded. The problem is he's not earning any sort of applicable real-life skill.
Exactly.
And he's not learning to be heroic. But the film is selling his ability to be very good at this film as a heroic act.
And I think good at the game,
being very good at the video game. And I think that is actually really a responsible thing for the film to be saying. It's okay to cloister yourself, absorb a lot of information about 80s trivia, misinterpret it. It doesn't matter how you're using that information, just you need to be able to recognize it in the Freebird Seltzer level.
You clearly haven't seen The Iron Giant or read the book that it's based on, which is why you're totally fine with using it as a weapon of war at the end.
Yeah.
That's misinterpreting
It leads
the
a war charge, and that is an aggressively pacifistic film. It is about pacifism.
Yeah.
The only full sentence the Iron Giant says aloud in that movie is, "I am not a gun." That's what he says.
Yeah.
Everything else is a fragment.
But no, he says Superman.
Well, he says like single words. That's the only full sentence.
You're right.
Says.
My bad. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So yeah, you don't have to necessarily know or even glean anything from that pop culture. You don't need to have been moved by that art. You only need to be able to recognize it. You don't even need to see it.
Yeah.
You just need to be able to recognize it, and that shock of recognition is seen as something heroic. Now, when you're knee-deep in geek culture, as I have been, it can feel like if when you get the references, or you meet somebody and you get each other's references, that feels like you're making some sort of connection. But that was taken down by John Cusack himself in the movie High Fidelity.
Well, yeah.
When you're trying to connect with something, I know this is shallow, he even points out, it's not what you're like, it's what you like.
Yeah.
That's the easy way to woo somebody.
Two
but it's not meaningful.
Two quick things in response to what you have, and they're separate, so I'm going to burn through one of them real fast, which is, and we bring up The Last Starfighter and The Monster Squad in this context because those are both stories about, your ability to recognize like horror movie tropes or ability to play video games. That in and of itself has practical value, but it's also about growing up and taking on resspibility and becoming a better person.
Doing something brave or dangerous with that knowledge.
Yeah, really that one touches on that, but it does not actually about that. Regard that sort of shock of recognition. There's so many in this movie that even though a part of me was like kind of rolling my eyes at the very idea of this as sort of a cinematic distraction, every once in a while, everyone says, "Hey, Battletoads!" Like I couldn't I couldn't turn it off completely.
I did that too for Battletoads. It's like
I didn't expect to see Battletoads.
Battletoads sucked up so much of my youth. Okay, my Battletoads story.
Oh no!
I saved up for months to buy Battletoads when it first came out, and
they hyped the hell out of Battletoads.
They hyped the hell out of it. It was in my Nintendo Power issues. I was really eager to get Battletoads. It was $60 to get Battletoads, and that was in 1980, whatever, maybe 90. And I saved up all my allowance. I bought Battletoads, and I put it in, and like everyone else who bought Battletoads sight unseen found it was far too challenging.
Yeah, Battletoads was tough.
There was a reason it was challenging, is to fight the rental market. They didn't want people to be able to rent it and beat it in a week. It had to be so hard that you needed to play it for months and months to get it. I didn't have the patience. It was far too difficult. I got frustrated too easily.
They overshot it.
And the store wouldn't take it back unless it was broken.
Crunch.
I wasn't quite so cavalier as to break it myself, but God, listening to me, broke my Battletoads cartridge for me.
Yay!
It simply did not work the next day. I brought it in and traded it in for another
There
one.
is a God, Battletoads
proves the presence of the divine.
But here's my thing. Here's my thing with Ready Player One, and why I'm mixed on it, because obviously I'm very critical about its construct, and it's just sort of like they have this. You know, it's this hero story. It's a very conventional, almost trite hero story. And they give the hero story to literally the least interesting character in the film. There are other more interesting characters in this film. Pretty much all of them.
Yeah, I was
name
going
one that's less interesting than the hero. Like name one. I beg of you.
I'm going. Well, he's wet shirt, white male avatar. It's boring, but
that's him.
That's him.
Yeah.
The treatment of the female character is also incredibly problematic in this movie, because he meets this hot, spiky-haired, big-eyed anime chick in the game.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the real people look like. That could be anybody. That could be an elderly man, for all he knows.
And she even has a speech saying, you don't know, he says he's in love with her, and she's like, whoa, we were playing a game. You don't know me.
Yeah.
You only know what I've told you about me. I could be very, very different. I don't look like this. And then we see her in the real world, and she looks like that.
She looks like that.
What?
She has a birthmark around her eye, which she's very self-conscious about. She combs her hair over it.
But of course, it's perfectly stylized, so it looks almost like a badass tattoo.
It actually looks like a badass tattoo. And our white man brushes her hair aside and says, I think you're beautiful. Okay, so thank you. Now I have validation, white man.
Yeah,
it's a good thing.
It's
a good thing I can only exist with your validation.
She has a whole speech about how that's all bullshit, and then he tries it one more time, and she's like, I have no principles. And you're just like, come on.
I have no value except how attractive I am to you, and how much I can aid you in beating this game.
She's actually part of a resistance movement. Like, she wants to win the game for important reasons, to shut down this company that is actually putting people in debtor's prison.
Yeah,
which is actually a really horrifying concept, and I'm glad we don't have that. People want that to exist. It's fucked up.
But it's only video game money.
but it has real world consequence. And but the thing is, she talks about how her parents were thrown in debtor's prison and died there.
Yeah.
And she's trying to change that system from the inside. But as the story goes on, she's like, you deserve to win it. No, he fucking doesn't.
You deserve to win it.
More than he does.
How come he's not helping you? How come he's not helping any of these other members of his crew?
That would have been a so much more exciting story if in the end he helped someone else win it.
Yeah,
he still would have helped. It would have been a great story for him. He would have had the sense of accomplishment, but maybe he realizes that actually there are other people who quote unquote deserve this a hell of a lot more.
And also,
because he's just not that interesting, and he has no goals. They ask him, what do you want to do with the money? I want to buy shit.
That's all, and that's it.
That's it. That's his dream.
He has no noble goal, and he's given access to the game. He can do whatever he wants with it. The world is pretty horrible.
The real world.
The real world is pretty horrible. And all he wants to do is take the money and just keep on keeping on.
Yeah. I understand that, but that's not a really heroic narrative.
Yeah, and from all the lip service that this film gives to the value of real world connections and leaving the game and meeting in real life and finding out who a real person is, why leave the game in place just to function the same way it always has?
There's a little bit of that, so I'm not going to tell you what happens. But
again, that is the weakest lip service they could possibly give to that, especially after a film that celebrates artificiality the way it does.
I really would have been cool if it actually made a statement, at the end of Escape from New York or Escape from L.A., where the hero just you know what, fuck it. Breaks a thing, just changes the whole world. It would have been interesting. But here's what I'm going to say about it, and I really do mean this, because as shallow and as poorly thought out as the narrative is, that in and of itself is not the worst thing in the world. It's just lame. It's not like the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just lame. There are so many visually exciting things in this movie. One of which I don't want to ruin for you, but there's a centerpiece in the middle where in order to solve the puzzle, they have to go really deeply into one piece of pop culture.
Okay.
In particular, which is, look, say what you will about, sort of taking something old and like rewriting over the original intent of it. You can say that all you want. That sequence is really fun. You can tell Spielberg loves the thing and he really enjoys playing with it.
In a vacuum, that is a great sequence.
That's a great sequence in a vacuum.
It's like the episode of Deep Space Nine where they just inserted themselves into
Trouble with Tribbles. Yeah, that's a great episode too. It's a fun thing, like there in the middle.
It's just a fun little aside.
Yeah, there's this there's this opening car chase where like there's the first clue is you have to beat this huge race, and the race is absurdly difficult.
Right.
And as we see the race, we see this is the one where King Kong pops out and jumps on cars and shit. And I'm watching this, I'm like, I gotta be honest, I want to play that game. Like, that game looks cool. Like, I actually enjoy that. That's neat.
I want to put 6 quarters in a sit-down arcade driving machine. And
that looks fun.
At a bowling alley. Yeah,
that
sounds great.
One of those things that bounces around with you. Like, that sounds like an awesome fucking game. If they don't make that as an arcade cabinet, they are stupid. Like, that should be in movie theaters. Like, that would be awesome. So there's all these really cool, exciting, visceral things, and I get on a purely cinematic level why Spielberg was excited to tackle this, even though the story sucked. Because he got to play with all this stuff. He got to play on a level that no other filmmaker gets to do. No other filmmaker gets to play on this big a canvas with all of these things, and you can tell he loves a lot of this stuff. But it's so weird that it's so shallow. It's like Spielberg, you had the opportunity to say something with it.
I'm going to compare that racing sequence to the movie Speed Racer, which is way more colorful and far shallower to the point of that being its aesthetic.
That's almost the joke.
Yeah. There's a weird sort of wink in Speed Racer that is missing from Ready Player One. I find it really curious. Spielberg grew up producing, making, and the art that inspired this sort of shallow pool of geek canonry.
Yeah, classics like Always in 1941.
Yeah, those ones.
Yeah.
And John Landis films like The Blues Brothers 2000.
We kid. I'm a big fan of Spielberg. I'm a big fan of Spielberg.
He's made some stinkers. Most of his films are pretty darn good.
Yeah.
The Post is great.
Yes, it is.
So Spielberg has a lot of personal connection. He even dresses the Mark Rylance character the exact same way he dressed one of the kids from E.T.
Oh my god! I didn't even notice
that Space Invaders shirt.
I didn't even notice that. That's funny.
Okay, yeah. So he's clearly riffing on the generation he grew up, kind of inspiring and being a part of.
Yeah.
And I am of the age that grew up consuming that generation of entertainment, so I recognized a lot.
Me too.
This is not a matter of me not getting the joke. I recognized probably at least 70 to 80% of the imagery that was being thrown at me, and the rest probably just went by too quickly. This takes place in the future, a couple generations removed, but it's being sold to people who didn't necessarily grow up with that. So this is like the same way people our age fetishized films from the 70s thanks to the indie boom brought about by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Now we have this echo of popular culture of people who are really fetishizing and upholding a certain aesthetic and a certain group of films and TV shows that aren't necessarily theirs.
I don't understand why this movie needs to take place in 2040. It feels like it would take place in 2025. I would buy it more because culture wouldn't have moved so rapidly. When you're talking about over 20 years in the future, on pop culture level, that's like 20 years seems like a long time to a human, but for a cockroach, which breeds real fast and great, that's like millions of generations. If you've ever, and I realize that a lot of people listening may be young and maybe haven't experienced this as much yet, because most of the people you interact with are about your same age and grew up with the same stuff. When you hit your late 20s, you start noticing a gap. And it could be a small gap. This person's 4 or 5 years younger than me, but they don't recognize this reference. They haven't seen this movie, or this movie is old to them, but it came out when I was 8, so I think of it as still very, very fresh and important to me. And you amplify that over time, and you realize just how almost stupid retro Oasis is. And that should be the comment. Here's the thing. That should be the comment. That this was created by a guy who was obsessed with shit from a long-ass time ago that we don't even get anymore.
Yeah.
Like, the most recent reference I saw in it is, like, Tracer from Overwatch. And even that was almost weird to see. There's a moment where we actually see the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's the Michael Bay
version
and I'm
of
like,
the Ninja Turtles.
that would not be in there. There's also, like, all this stuff where, if you really think about it, if it was being created by this guy who was inspired by, like, Steven Spielberg movies in the 80s, it wouldn't look like a Janusz Kaminski film. It would look like a Dean Cundy film. Like, if you think about it,
Dean Cundy's still working.
I know. Like, Janusz Kaminski, if you don't know what we're talking about,
those are the photographers that Spielberg worked with.
So Steven Spielberg has worked with cinematographer Janusz Kaminski in, I think, every single one of his films since Schindler's List.
I think so. He worked with Vilmos Zsigmond a couple times.
He's worked with other filmmakers ones since, but ever since Schindler's List, Janusz Kaminski, I've interviewed him. He's an incredible talent. Like, he's a brilliant cinematographer. I have not an unkind word to say about him, but he has a particular aesthetic. He likes to drench things. He likes to blow out the light from windows. Everything just feels a little muted in his aesthetic, and that's not what Steven Spielberg movies in the 80s looked like. They were more colorful and vibrant and bright, and, say what you will about what's better or what's worse. If you're inspired by the 80s style, they wouldn't look like late 90s, early 2000s style. Yeah. It was an odd decision. If I either would have said, hey, Janusz, you want to sit this one out? Or, hey, Janusz, do what Dean Cundy would do. Yeah. Like, do it. Like, I'm curious what you would do. Like, brighten this shit up. Because you have this incredible... Maybe they did it because Speed Racer failed, but you have this colorful, giant video game universe, and everything is grim. Yeah. Everything is bleached out. I'm like, where's the fucking color, for God's sake? Like, turn up the tint on the TV screen or your monitor, whatever you got. It's crazy. It's a mixed bag, though, because I honestly think I really did enjoy a lot of it, and there's scenes I would tell people to see. Like, there's good stuff to be found here, but is the story just crap.
It doesn't function as a movie. There's no actual theme. Anything that the book could have been saying, or the book and the movie could have been saying, are washed up in this really dumb, very shallow power fantasy.
Yeah.
The female and the villain are treated very, very badly. Overall, I don't even want to call it a mixed bag. It's like a really nice bag full of garbage. It's like a really beautiful velvet sack that you want to touch, but the contours of the garbage inside belie what's actually in there.
Serious question. Have you seen every Steven Spielberg movie?
Not ever. You know what? I have not seen 1941. And I've not seen the Sugarland Express.
Okay, so there's a couple I haven't seen either. So with that being said, what's the worst Steven Spielberg movie?
That's a little bit of a toughie. The Lost World Jurassic Park is a stinker.
Yep.
I do not like War of the Worlds. I know some people do.
There's a lot I like in it.
Yeah. Amistad is clunky and just emotionally fraught and kind of badly thought out.
There's so many good bits in it, though. I'm really torn by Amistad. There's some really good stuff.
A few good scenes, a few good speeches in that really bland sort of Hollywood way.
Yeah.
I know you don't like War Horse. I think War Horse is fine.
I think War Horse is terrible. I think War Horse is just the most overwrought, like, maudlin movie I think he's ever made. I'm not saying something. For me it's actually, it feels like a cheat, but there's a TV movie he directed called Something Evil.
Okay.
He had already done Duel, which is like one of the best TV movies ever. That's why they showed it in theaters. It made his career, basically, and Duel is fantastic. Then he made, written by the director of Enter the Dragon, which is crazy.
Weird.
A haunted house movie called Something Evil, which is boring as fuck. Like, it's really not a well-made movie. Like, the ending gets a little neat, like, right in the last couple of minutes, but it's not worth getting there. Yeah. It's so bad. Theatrically, though, I mean, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is just stupid on toast. It's just, I feel like it's the ones that feel like he kind of sold out a bit. Like, he kind of you don't see like why he made it. Like, I understand why 1941 got made. I think it's a misfire, but there's clearly things in that movie he's really passionate about. I don't see a lot of passion in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I don't see a lot of passion.
Well, he's
in the Lost World.
He's mellowed he's mellowed and matured as a filmmaker over the years, and so when he goes into something that's a little bit more adult, like Munich or The Post or Lincoln, which is his best movie, period.
There's a very valid argument for that. I don't know if I'd say that, but that's right up there. Yeah.
That's where his heart is now. Even when he's doing a science fiction film with a lot of thought behind it, like Minority Report, that's a great film. Here, when he's trying to do what he used to do and he just doesn't really have the heart in it anymore, it's like he doesn't understand what he's doing anymore.
I think
he knows how to handle visuals just because he has those skills, but he doesn't have enough invested in the action to make it seem like there's an important outcome to the action.
I don't think he's telling you look at this or you look at Tintin, a movie I mostly really like.
I don't like Tintin.
I think Tintin is so much wonderful stuff in there, and I just think it gets really overblown. I feel like he's trying too hard to entertain us and not trying hard enough to tell the story of these younger characters. I think he's an older filmmaker now, and he is. And I think it's where his head is at, and when he's trying to tell us a story that he thinks will excite us, it feels like he's trying a little too hard. No, that said, he's still so damn talented that, again, there are bits in this movie that are really cool. But it's not really worth getting to them except for that one piece in the middle, which I think is fantastic.
Here's the best way to tell Ready Player One. You do everything the same, the game is the same, the goal is the same, but in the real world, everyone is like really unhealthy. Like they're either diseased or they're not eating enough or they're super overweight or they're missing they look like the blob people from WALL-E.
But in real life, so it's actually kind of horrifying.
Yeah, so when you meet somebody in real life, they're all just or they can barely move or they're coughing a lot. You need like an actual consequence of playing a game too much. They have rashes or they're losing their hair.
Okay, I don't like that.
Or you make the real world so awful that it's been neglected because too many people are playing this game too much.
I don't think we need to blame the game. I think you can also get away with the world is so horrible. I totally get why people escape. For example, neither of us are big fans of James Cameron's Avatar.
Yeah,
it's visually impressive, but the story is kind of crap. But the director's cut makes one change in particular that really helps. They add one bit. It's actually a really short scene.
Prologue. Yeah,
it's a little prologue that just shows Sam Worthington's character on Earth. Before he goes to the magical land of Pandora on Earth. And Earth sucks. That's it. It's one scene. It just tells you, like, Earth fucking sucks. And
of course he wants to live on this, like, colorful Eden
planet. If he came from, like, our Earth, I mean, Avatar is still better, but Earth is okay. Like, no. Earth is a shithole, and Avatar is better. Yeah. Here, they like, people live in, like, these, like, Last Starfighter, trailer homes, but they're all like stacked on top of each other in shitty makeshift skyscrapers. Okay, everyone seems okay.
Yeah, in fact,
everyone seems reasonably happy. Everyone can afford all these virtual reality machines.
And there's this great big pan over, and everybody's playing the game. But some people are like out, like watering flowers and having a good time and drinking coffee. It's like life is not terrible.
People are poor, but people are reasonably happy.
The game has to be like not just more alluring than real life. Real life has to be horrible, and either there's a horrible cataclysm that people. There's a really not really a terrific film, but Fangoria produced a film with Bruce Campbell. I believe it was called Mind Warp.
Yep.
And that has a similar premise where everyone's just sort of moved underground. They live in virtual reality all the time, and the surface of the planet is now just overrun by like mutant warriors.
Yeah. Like imagine if like the real world of Ready Player One was a 1984 dystopia.
Yeah.
Like really super oppressive in every conceivable way, and the only place people had freedom was in this virtual reality world that was created by a dreamer who, through the success of his capitalism, has managed to isolate it so that no one can touch it and make it as oppressive as the real world. And that is what the corporations want to do. That's kind of there, but they don't sell that. And they can sell it so hard. This just needs bigger stakes and bigger context.
Yeah. Spielberg should do the animated sequences, and Terry Gilliam should do the real world sequences.
Someone with a dark mentality.
One last comment on sort of nostalgia. I forgot what I was going to say.
You're going to say something about nostalgia? Is it
bad? I was going to say something, just sort of about the damage that nostalgia can do.
Well, look, here's the thing that I'm kind of waiting for. I'm waiting for nostalgia to flip. Because what happens is nostalgia's fine. Like, nostalgia exists for a reason. We think about the times when we grew up and things were simpler and we could appreciate things on just a pure level and just sort of not question them and just sort of enjoy. And that's great. I totally get that. I have that too. I had that when I was a kid, and there's a lot of things I watch today that I saw when I was young that I know weren't that good, but I still appreciate them when they bring to mind some happy memories. Then what?
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for the then what, because everyone is living with, the new generation of audiences is living with, as we kind of discussed, the fantasies of the filmmakers of today who grew up in the 80s. I'm waiting for them to put all of these fucking all this 80s shit aside. Stuff I love, a lot of it. I want them to just kick it away. I'm done with it. I don't give a shit anymore. I want to see what you got.
Yeah.
Seriously. No more Transformers movies. We're done. What do you got? Give me something new. I'd love to see it. I would love it.
Here's what I was going to say. Nostalgia is there's an element to nostalgia that is often gets overlooked when we find ourselves in sort of communities where we're allowed to let sort of our geek flags fly, and it's the corporate element. When you buy a Funko Pop figurine and you put it on top of your computer and you have Jareth from Labyrinth looking over you.
I literally have a Jareth from Labyrinth Funko
Do you really?
Pop. Yes, I do.
Wow. All right.
I bought it after I won the Schmodown match against Andraco, and the only reason I won is because he missed a Jareth question.
Okay, so there's a little poetry to
there's
that.
There's a reason I have that, yeah.
When you do that,
I thought you were specifically referencing that.
Actually, I wasn't. That was just randomly chosen.
That's really funny.
When you do that, you are not just engaging in this sort of, I love this art, I want to have this keepsake of this art on my table, and that way I have this sort of connection to it all the time. You're also engaged in, and this is important, a financial transaction.
Yep.
The corporate entity that owns Jareth is part of this transaction. And every time you look at that Jareth figurine, you are engaged in this financial transaction with this gigantic company.
If you think about it, all they've sold you is a hunk of plastic, and they just put the word Jareth on it. That's all they really needed to do.
And they knew that they could get their hook into you with that word, and they got a little money out of your wallet, and you took it home. And when you look at how often that, now it's not just one time that happens. It happens 1,000 times a day with many, many people. And when you look at
more than 1,000, this drives the economy in some ways.
When you look at Ready Player One, what companies are getting royalties for all of these characters that people are ripping off? Freddy Krueger, okay, New Line Cinema gets a few of your dollars. Iron Giant, I think it's Warner Brothers.
You're talking about within the world of the movie.
Who's getting all of that? And you realize that corporations are getting fat off of this nostalgia run amok in the idealized world of corporate entertainment.
Yeah, all these kids are talking about how free they feel and how amazing Oasis is and how we have to protect this.
But they're not using any of their own imagination. They are engaging in this corporate relationship with the nostalgia providers.
Yeah.
And to fold into that world a story about an evil corporation that wants to sell you ads is completely antithetical.
See what I mean? This is the difference between text, subtext, and functionality.
Yeah.
The text and subtext say this one nice thing, but functionally, the existence of the movie disproves the whole point the movie is trying to make. So it really is a problem.
If you go into Ready Player One, you say, "Boo corporations! I'm going to have all my corporate-owned licensed characters around me instead."
Well, fuck it. You're just giving to the movie. You're also going to Warner Brothers.
You're giving money to other corporations rather than that one. That's not a heroic choice.
And here's what we're going to say, because I know it sounds like we're just doing this like anti-capitalism rant, but this is what the movie is talking about. Is this anti-corporate mentality, and it is a corporate product,
and it needs
filled with commercials for other corporate products. It's really ironic.
It needs to address that. It needs to at least bring it up, even if you're not going to address it in an interesting way. You have to at least bring it up.
I'm going to correct myself. It's not. I said it's not ironic. It isn't ironic, or it is ironic, but like. Ironic can be a good thing. Ironic can be you can make a statement with irony.
You can make a satire.
This is just hypocrisy.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And listen, I own a lot of shirts with geeky shit on it.
I'm a Trekkie. I own all the Trek stuff.
Fine.
It's fine. Yeah.
But my shirt doesn't also say, "and I hate this shirt." Like, That's a weird. It's like, I hate my Star Wars shirt, and it's a picture of Han Solo with a gun going, yeah. Like you don't.
I would. I think I'll get that shirt.
I would also get that shirt. Actually, in fact, if someone wants to put that on the Schmo Facebook like public thing, like I'll get that.
I hate my Star Wars shirt, and it's the Millennium Falcon, and it's barfing or something.
It's not barfing. We don't need it. Just Millennium Falcon.
Just the Millennium Falcon. I hate this Star Wars
because people
shirt.
will see it and think you just like Star Wars, and they'll be like, oh wait.
What? That's a conversation starter. Right
I think it's great. We need to move on. I think we've said a lot. Ready Player One, for all of its enormous flaws, I think there is some real skill and craftsmanship put into a lot of it, and I think it's a film that ultimately, when we get a little distance from it, we're going to look at Steven Spielberg's whole career, and I think this is going to be one of those movies where we look at this to kind of unlock him a little bit. Like, it's just like, what was he saying about his career at this point? And I think we're going to need a little distance right now, because we just saw it, but it's weird.
At the end of the year, when I've let this percolate a little bit, I'll have something more to say about it. Let's move on to another movie.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen the other movies, so these are going to be relatively shorter, because I'll have less to contribute.
Tyler Perry's Acrimony.
Yay!
This is actually only my second Tyler Perry film that I've seen of him as a director.
Wow.
The other one was Tyler Perry's Temptation Conventions of a Marriage Counselor,
which is amazing,
which is spectacular.
Yeah, really, absolutely, just mouth open the whole time. Wow, what a melodrama!
Like shamelessly moralizing melodrama.
Undeniably entertaining in every way, whether it's intentional or otherwise. Wow.
In this one, Taraji P. Henson plays a woman named Melinda, and she is going back in flashback over a relationship she had with her ex-husband. How she met him in college, how they got married to the objections of their family, how they moved into her old childhood home, and how throughout the entire time he was kind of a deadbeat. Early in their relationship, he cheated on her, but he said he would shape up. He was trying to work on this piece of technology that wasn't really working, and it turns out it's this battery that is just draining money out of her accounts. She inherited a great amount of wealth, and he takes all of it away, working on not getting a job and working on this piece of tech. And she is getting more and more incensed as the years pass. She eventually divorces him, gets him out of the life, and then when he moves on with his life, she gets so pissed off that she goes on like this rage rant.
So she's acrimonious.
She's acrimonious. She goes all Taraji P. Henson on his ass.
Yeah. I love Taraji P. Henson. I love Taraji P. Henson more than I love some of my family members.
Her whirlwind of hate is awesome to behold.
You know, she is just one of the most dynamic actors we have right now. Yeah, any material, she just brings so much to it.
She's like, she swings for the walls without making it seem campy.
Yeah.
Somehow she manages to do that. She has that level.
She's one of those actors where, listen, sometimes there are people who overact. That's just a thing that happens. But some characters are just big. You've met them in your real life. People just have outsized personalities. You believe them because they're real. But in a movie, maybe it would seem kind of extreme and be easy to like sort of mess up and overdo them. With Taraji P. Henson plays like a really outsized character, like she does on, say, Empire. You believe it. Yeah, she brings all the humanity to it, but everything big about that character just glows. It's so cool. So I'm bummed I missed this.
Just watching her kind of go through this journey of slow burn marital angst is actually pretty fascinating.
Is there a scene where like her eye just twitches, like it pans over to her, just going?
Oh, that's the whole last third of the movie. It's fantastic. Tyler Perry has made many, many films, and he is still a very facile filmmaker. He does not know how to shoot a scene dynamically at all.
Based on the films you've seen.
Based on the film. Well, I've seen like clips and other things.
Yeah, but like fair enough. Based on this film,
the last one I've seen, and clips of other films, he tends to film in really sort of evenly lit, very flat, sometimes against really obvious green screens that aren't needed necessarily. It looks like even cheap for a TV production. He's making TV movies, more or less. And given a lot of his tendency to moralize cheaply, it feels appropriate that he's going for that sort of TV movie level. It's difficult to say in a film like Acrimony how much we're supposed to sympathize with Taraji P. Henson and how much we're supposed to vilify her, because she does go a little over the top.
Well, this is,
and she says throughout that she has like a really horrible temper, and she does tend to go over the top. Early in the movie, she drives a truck into a trailer just on a whim.
Yeah, one of the things that I think typifies. I haven't seen all of Tyler Perry's movies by any stretch of the imagination, but I've seen more than you. And one of the things I found in a lot of his films and his dramas and comedies alike is there's this sort of whiplash of sort of plausible melodrama to holy shit.
Yeah.
And that is everything from the Medea movies, which can be very conversational, and then something huge and wacky happens. Or this is actually also a Medea movie, which is only a very small part of it, Diary of a Mad Black Woman, which is like the majority of the movie is actually like a somewhat plausible story about a woman who thinks she has a great marriage, but then her husband dumps her, and then what has she got? And then all of a sudden you meet Medea, who all of a sudden is just coming in out of like a comedy sketch.
Yeah.
And it's totally strange that she's even there. And then you have a whole narrative about her kind of getting her life together, realizing her own self-worth. And then the movie just fucking flips on its head and becomes, and just takes this protagonist who we were totally with for a while and puts her in a position to do some really horrible things, and she does them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of narratively fascinating, actually. Just the risks he takes, and whether or not he succeeds is, it's hit and miss. But like, man, he does not follow like a set like list. He doesn't like follow all the rules, and that's kind of interesting to watch.
Well, you know what? He does the same thing in Acrimony.
Okay,
where there's this big flip near the end, and all of a sudden, like the last act of the movie is like Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, okay.
It just goes. It goes really super wild, and I don't want to say what happens, but there's bloodshed.
Wow.
And again, Tyler Perry seemed less interested in exploring her like for much of the film you think we're exploring her anger and how justified she feels, but the narrative also follows the ex-husband pretty closely and tries to stage him as kind of a redeemable figure. And we realize it's more his story and less hers by the time we get to the end.
That sounds very strange.
And I'm wondering why he felt the need to tell this story about trying to justify a woman's anger. And indeed, there's dialogue to the effect of every time a black woman gets angry, she suddenly becomes a cliche. And then he just like falls into those cliches. And he starts like refocusing the narrative into something that is, ridiculously thrilling just because of how irresponsible and goofy and over the top it is.
I think it's something that I think actually might have something to do with the fact that Tyler Perry, he got his start, or I'm not his biographer, but like it's my understanding, he got his start doing church plays.
Yeah, he was doing a lot of theater.
And the exploration of his characters' like faith, it can be a really important part of a lot of his stories, even some of the Medea films, which can also be very broad and very crude and maybe exalt some really unchristian things like stealing candy from trick-or-treaters. And you're just like, am I supposed to like you? I don't know. I digress. But one of the things that comes from that, and you see this in a lot of Christian cinema, is a tendency to... there's a lot of characters we would just quickly demonize. Like, for example, Ben Mendelsohn in Ready Player One. We don't really see him be nice to his kids or anything like that. He's just a bad guy. There's a tendency in a lot of these stories to sort of take people who've done bad things and maybe see if they're redeemable and give them a chance to sort of explore how they got this way and are they capable of becoming better. You look at like the husband in like The War Room, for example, where it's just like, yeah, he could have just been a total dick. Then there's redemption, and like you can explore that, and there's something narratively kind of unusual and interesting about that. I don't know if it's good. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you take a risk and it doesn't pay off. I mean, Temptation was another one where just swinging for the fences. It's a spectacularly entertaining movie, but I get the impression that some of its entertainment value is accidental. That it's just like they're just overselling every plot point really hard. So, is it entertaining? Is it good?
The overselling is entertaining, and there were a lot of wonderful bad laughs throughout Acrimony, throughout the audience. And Taraji P. Henson is just fascinating. She knows how to handle this material, but I'm not really sure what sort of moral Tyler Perry is supposed to be going for here, because if it's the one I think it is, and I don't want to reveal without giving away the ending, then it's kind of mean. It feels kind of mean.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Mean can be good if it's supposed to be like a thriller or whatever. Like Body Heat has a mean ending.
Well, that's a noir. This is
so this doesn't have that vibe.
No,
this isn't like a femme fatale story.
No.
Okay, all right. That was how I was interpreting it based on what you were saying.
Okay.
I was thinking it was more like
Fatal Attraction
or She Devil or something like that, with like a sort of a dark comedy kind of thing.
No, it's a legit drama, and then it becomes Tales from the Crypt.
Okay, well that sounds fascinating. And then lastly, tell me about Gemini.
Speaking of fascinating, Gemini is a film about two young women. One is played by Zoe Kravitz. She is the hot young star of the moment, and she is on the cusp of walking away from some big film project.
Oh, in the movie? Or
in the movie.
Oh, okay, because I was like, Zoe Kravitz's been around for a while.
No, that's her character.
Okay, I was you're only just noticing Zoe Kravitz?
She plays No, I've noticed Zoe Kravitz
okay,
before.
I was about to say, she's great. I like Zoe Kravitz.
And Lola Kirk plays her personal assistant, who has to kind of cover for her, and you realize really early in the film that they do have kind of it's like a friendship for hire relationship. They actually do really like each other. They know each other very well. They spend a lot of time together. And they're very fond of one another, but their relationship is predicated on the fact that Lola Kirk was hired. Zoe Kravitz recently broke up with a boyfriend, might be getting together with a girlfriend, but this is all still like on the down low. And right near the beginning of the film, Zoe Kravitz asks Lola Kirk for a gun.
Okay.
Thanks to Chekhov's rule, we know what's going to happen with that gun.
It will eventually be forgotten entirely, and we're just going to have a nice little romantic comedy.
Right, because that's the way all of Chekhov's plays ended.
Oh, wait, it's not opposite day. I'm sorry. No, it's going to go off by the end.
Yeah.
That's for if you're young and you don't know what that is, or you haven't taken like a theater class. Chekhov's gun. The rule is if you see a gun at the start of a play or a movie, by the end it has to go off. Yeah. Because otherwise, why would you show it? Like, it's weird. Like,
so
you see something really...
the phrase Chekhov's gun is now bandied about pretty haphazardly.
Like, if you see in like a horror movie, someone points out like, oh, hey, that's a pretty big chainsaw you got there. They're going to do something with the chainsaw. Yeah. You didn't have to bring that up.
Wow, that's a pretty rickety staircase.
I wonder if this will be important later.
Chekhov's staircase.
I started saying that in real life whenever I just notice something in particular. Oh, that's a really big swimming pool you got here. I wonder if that'll be important later.
So, a terrible crime occurs, and I don't want to tell you what happens, but Lola Kirk ends up having to go on the run. She is being pursued by Detective John Cho, detective played by John Cho.
I love John Cho.
John Cho is great.
I love him.
He's just now starting to show his age, which is creepy because he's 160. No, I'm kidding. He looks great for his age, is my comment.
Yeah.
Even though the film eventually starts going into deep into noir territory, like L.A. noir, it's clearly clashing a lot of the old Raymond Chandler L.A. noir tone with a very modern Hollywood glitz, and how the glitz will always kind of punch down that tone.
Interesting.
There's a scene where Lola Kirk is wandering around through a house looking for clues, and she wanders into a room that there's nobody in the room, but there's a movie playing, being projected on the wall, and it's old 1940s noir, projected above her head, and that's like an Altman move.
Sure.
And so she's looking around, noir film, I guess. So she's kind of just outside of the noir film. That's sort of the aesthetic that's going on here. And even though it does have these noir undertones and the detective story is a little bit thrilling, it's much more about the relationship between these two women and what it means that they would be separated the way they were, the way they communicated, the way before, how they kept on having to grow really close while always having to have that sort of financial barrier, and how little bits of their friendship can kind of leak through, and how that relationship is actually really, really important.
Okay.
It sounds good. It's really fascinating. It's a really terrific friendship drama. It's really funny. The characters are all very witty, but not in that sort of obnoxious, quippy way. They just speak well. And the detective story is told well enough. It starts to wear a little bit, like a lot of detective stories tend to, when we are just waiting for the next clue to show up. But by the time it concludes, you realize sort of the nature of what the film actually was trying to do, and it's actually really quite fascinating.
Serious question, because this is the only other thing I know about this movie. Ricky Lake is in it.
Ricky Lake is in it, playing a version of herself in one scene. That's it.
Because I actually like her as an actor. She's really good in Hairspray. Even that movie, Mrs. Winterbourne, she's in. It's actually like it's okay. It's not her fault. Like it was just like she's good in it.
It's an okay comedy.
Well, I always liked her as a performer. It was okay. I was bummed. I thought maybe she'd have like a fun role in it or something.
She doesn't play Ricky Lake, but she may as well be playing Ricky Lake in that one scene.
All right, so
Michelle Forbes shows up in one scene as well.
Of course she does.
Oh, look, Michelle Forbes. Oh, she's gone. Bye,
Michelle.
Good to see you, Michelle Forbes.
Michelle Forbes is one of those actors who is legally obligated to be in every television series. Like, you watch any television series, as a television series gets longer and longer, the odds of a Michelle Forbes like cameo eventually approach like 1-to-1.
Yeah.
It's just like it's gonna happen.
The Michelle Forbes singularity.
There you go. So on the critically acclaimed scale judges movies from C- to C+, with C- being as good as it gets, bad as it gets, and C+ being as good as it gets, and C being how does Gemini fare?
Gemini's a C+. I think it's a really, really great little moving drama.
Okay. What about Tyler Perry's Acrimony?
I'm going to give it a C. I liked all the crazy stuff too much to really like penalize it for all the stuff I was complaining about. But the stuff I was complaining about is worth complaining about.
And Ready Player One, again, a lot of really legitimate complaints about the story and everything. However, especially in a theater, viscerally, it's very exciting and very engaging. And I don't feel comfortable writing it off entirely. However, there's a lot to unpack in this movie, and it's another one, not unlike Isle of Dogs, where I feel like I might need to give this a little bit of time before I come to any sort of serious conclusion about definitely how I feel about it. Like, is it so bad that the great filmmaking aspects are neutralized, or is it okay that those things are so exciting that it's distracting from the fact that the plot sucks? So right now I'm going to give it a C.
Okay.
It's not a passionate C. It's like middle C. Where it's just like the good stuff is really good, the bad stuff is really bad, and somewhere in the middle, it's watchable.
Yeah.
What about you?
C-. Okay. I think that however great the visual stuff is, if it's in service of something that's actually something that feels irresponsible to me, it's not gonna
I'm not sure how irresponsible it is. It just feels backwards and trite.
Yeah.
I know that's bad, but I don't know if it's irresponsible. But that said, from what I've heard, like the book is more irresponsible even than the movie. I don't know.
I don't like to write off on things that pander to white male geeks who are currently ruling the world anyway.
Yeah,
so why just give them another thing?
Well, I mean, they have it. Regardless,
they have it already. So
it's a shame because it's obviously like a lot of potential in that, and it didn't come through. But now it's time for the main event.
One last thing.
I'm sorry. It's not time for the main event yet.
There was a really great spoof in McSweeney's called Ready Player 2, which was Ready Player 2 : the girl stuff. And it did sort of call into question just how male a lot of the interests in Ready Player 1 are. A lot of the references are stuff boys would do. Girls got into it too, but it goes like deeper into like the greatest American Girl dolls, or My Little Pony cartoons. The quote girl properties, and does point out that there's this kind of sexist dynamic still at play in a lot of this nostalgia.
I think I saw that. I think that was the one. I think there was one they had in there, which was about a bit of trivia from Rainbow Bright and the Star Stealer, which is a movie my wife and I like quite a bit actually, and we were looking at that, and I'm just like, that seems pretty obscure for Rainbow Bright. Like, what piece of clothing does Rainbow Bright's horse not want to wear, and that? And I'm just like, there are other more interesting aspects of that movie that we could talk about. We could talk about like the villain and her pet gem that she argues with that doesn't argue back because it's an inanimate rock. We could talk about the robot horse Onyx, which runs on people telling it to try. It's great. I love Onyx. Try Onyx, try, and Onyx just keeps headbutting walls because it doesn't know what else to do with its rockets, and it's really cool.
Is that the one with the smooths, or is that the My Little Pony movie? I watched them back to back, and they've mushed together.
I think you're thinking of the My Little Pony movie.
Yeah, I guess so. The one from the 80s, not the more recent one.
Yeah,
anyway, let's move on to the main event.
We got to move on to the main event. All right, so you had the option. You had the option of a variety of films, which have been declared at one point or another the best or one of the best ever made. And your options were films like Citizen Kane, Jean Renoir's The Rules of the Game, which I think got the fewest votes because people don't talk about it anymore. But I highly recommend watching it. It's great.
Fewer than 10 votes. To your brave souls who voted for The Rules of the Game, good for you.
I think we had 8.5 on there as well. But the one you chose the action movie. But I think I phrased that well. You chose the action movie.
You chose the film that more or less codified to this very day the way action movies tend to be built and the way they function.
Yeah.
You chose Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai, or just Seven Samurai.
Seven Samurai. It's from 1954. Mm-hmm. Wasn't the first samurai movie. It wasn't the first action movie. You got to go to pirate movies and Tarzans and so on and so forth.
And great train robbery, for goodness sake.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like there were action movies before this. Seven Samurai is one of the films that actually invented a genre, and it's a genre I think we all basically take for granted. If you've ever seen a movie in which a task needed to be performed and they assembled a group of experts to perform that task, Seven Samurai invented that.
Yeah.
That did not exist once. And it wasn't that long ago, all things considered. Like every heist movies and war movies,
every superhero team movie, every last one.
All of these things kind of all start here, and not only that, but the way action was filmed kind of started here in a lot of different ways. Now there were cool action sequences before this, but it was mostly just cameras like pulled far away.
Yeah, well, and here's the fun thing: if you know anything about Kurosawa, he did do this like really great dynamic action. He borrowed that from Eisenstein.
Oh, yeah.
And Eisenstein borrowed that from D.W. Griffith. So he's actually, like, kind of coming... He was so acutely aware of the history of world cinema.
Oh, and his samurai films have a lot of influence from Westerns as well. So everything's kind of eating itself and until it finally formed Seven Samurai. And so among the things he did in Seven Samurai that either hadn't been done before or hadn't been codified before and, like, done in this way... people had done slow motion before, but there really isn't an earlier instance of cutting between slow motion and normal speed action within the same scene to create suspense. That wasn't around before Seven Samurai. Shooting a big action scene with multiple cameras so that you can just cut them all together quickly rather than restaging it every single time. Seven Samurai. The scene in an action movie... where we're introduced to the hero doing an isolated adventure that doesn't have anything to do with the plot, just to establish how badass they are. Like, say, the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Seven Samurai.
Or every James Bond movie, for that matter.
There you go. All of these things... Again, Seven Samurai didn't invent all of them, but they put them all in one thing. And they created a new genre.
It was really the flashpoint for so much of what we take for granted in action-based cinema. And... Kurosawa, however, wasn't... I wouldn't call him an action director.
No.
He's actually a very great dramatic director. He's really good with character. More than that, he's really good with theme and tone.
He's kind of only made like 2 or 3 action movies.
That could be called, like, Kagemusha, I guess, could be called an action movie.
I guess you could. And I would say Yojimbo, and to a lesser extent, Sanjuro as well.
Are kind of action movies as well. But yeah, more than anything, he liked delving into human panic. I think that was kind of his métier. He liked to meet people when they were about to have a moment of complete crisis, and how their panic or their cool can bring them through.
Yeah.
And what the samurai have in the Seven Samurai is something that hadn't been named yet. I guess it was slang in America and it was slang in Europe as well, but it's cool.
Yeah.
And Seven Samurai, however, the samurai in Kurosawa's film are depicted as very noble characters.
And the ones that we follow. We see shitty samurai.
And there are bad samurai, and in fact, some of the... Toshiro Mifune is not honorable, necessarily. Yeah. He has a moment, but he's not an honorable person.
Yeah.
He's constantly stealing from corpses. He's not a good guy.
Yeah.
But... that's sort of what we think of as a cool action hero. Somebody who is unflappable in an amazing situation also comes from Seven Samurai, but that's an interpretation of what we took from Seven Samurai. I wouldn't describe those characters as cool. They aren't badasses. They're capable. They're honorable.
They are experienced soldiers who, when faced with, unthinkable odds... are willing to do the right thing and capable of doing the right thing.
Exactly.
And that makes them incredible heroes. When we start Seven Samurai, here's the plot of Seven Samurai, in case you don't know it. And you've seen this ripped off many times, whether or not you've seen Seven Samurai. Seven Samurai opens with a village of farmers in about 1586, I think.
Yeah, 16th century Japan.
And they live in a poor village. They farm, I think, wheat and rice, and
it's all grains.
It's all grains.
Barley, millet, yeah. That's
and a bunch of bandits actually come by the town. And they say, "Oh, we should raid this town and take all their stuff." And then someone says, "No, we raided them last year, and their fields aren't ready yet. They'll have nothing right now. We'll come back after the wheat ripens, and we'll take everything then." Then they ride away.
One of the villagers overhears them saying this,
and so they realize we have a ticking clock. And they're going to come back, and they're going to kill us all, and they're going to take all our stuff.
And there's nothing we can really do about it.
Yeah, we could flee, but then we'll have nothing, and we'll die of starvation anyway. What do we do? And they have a big meeting with the elders of the village. And this meeting is everything. It seems like it's just exposition, but what you see here, and it's something we talked about in Ready Player One, where the idea is here's the action, and here are there stakes? Because if they lose the game, they're kind of just in the same position. Yeah. It doesn't really affect anything. Here it's life and death, and people are desperate. People are crying and ready to kill themselves, and said, "Why bother? Everyone kill yourselves!" Like, it's that horrible and brutal. They're so screwed. And then they go to the elders, the oldest man in the village, and he says, "What we need to do is we need to hire samurai." And they're like, "What are you talking about? We have nothing.
Yeah.
We have some food. We can give them food." And he's like, "Then find hungry samurai."
Yeah.
Which is a great line.
Find hungry samurai. So they go to town, which is several days right away. And yeah, they start looking around for samurai. This is an era where a lot of samurai don't have masters anymore.
Ronin.
There's a lot of ronin just sort of wandering around, and a lot of them are hungry. They need work. They're professional soldiers without bosses, essentially. They need to be hired. And
we see one guy who's using his incredible skill with a sword to chop firewood, because that's the job he's got. Yeah. Like, it's like he's one of the things.
Kind of ruining his sword in so doing.
Yeah.
They meet Takashi Shimura, who becomes the leader of the samurai.
He is the leader.
Who has been in several Kurosawa films. He is
great actor.
A
incredible.
Fantastic actor. He was the lead in Ikiru. He was in Godzilla. I guess Gojira. But yeah, he's recently been dishonored. He shaves his head.
Well, he dishonored himself, though.
Yeah.
The idea of shaving your head and cutting off your top, not anything, is that's something that's like, oh my god, you don't do that.
Yeah.
When we meet him, what happens is they run into a couple of samurai. The samurai don't want to do shit. Because I need money. You're not going to pay me? Fuck you.
We have a handful. I think they have a handful of millet a day. I think was their pay.
No, they're eating millet. They're eating the shit stuff. They have a handful of rice for the samurai, but that's all they got. And they run into Kanbei is the character's name.
Kanbei.
And they see him in the middle of basically an adventure. And there is a thief who is hiding in a hut. And everyone's like, well, why don't they just go in and get him? And there's like, well, he's kidnapped a child, and he says he'll kill him if we send anyone in there. So Kanbei cuts off his hair, puts on the robe of a priest, goes and says, "Oh, I've brought food for you and the child. We just want to make sure everything's okay." Slice, slice, slice! The guy runs out in slow-mo. Everyone's watching in normal motion. It's an incredible sequence, and nothing like it had been done. And everyone's like, holy shit, what an amazing samurai. And they go up to him. And so do two other people.
Yeah.
So the peasants go up to him to ask for his help. Also, who's the young one?
Oh, the young samurai. That's
Katsushiro.
Katsushiro.
Yeah, Katsushiro. He's a young, idealistic samurai. And he goes and like, make me your apprentice, please. And he's like, oh, well, we can talk. Come on, let's talk. And then also there's Toshiro Mifune, who is also impressed, but he's just like, hey, you're tough. I like tough. Toshiro Mifune plays Kikuchio.
Kikuchio is a buffoon.
He's a buffoon.
He's
awesome.
A trickster. He's literarily classical, and he's hilarious, and he's a coward, and you love him.
Yeah,
and he's played by Toshiro Mifune, so he's like really appealing and kind of energetic.
He's almost like Bill Paxton in Aliens if he was like more redeemable. Like he wasn't like that much of a coward.
More likable. Yeah.
Yeah. So like he shows up and he is poor. He's got a sword that's bigger than he is.
And you're not sure if he just found that sword recently and is just calling himself a samurai, or if he actually was a samurai.
There's a scene where he tries to prove that he's actually like of noble birth, that he's not a nobody, and you realize he has stolen like someone's birth certificate and the person was 13 years old. And everyone's just like, you're not 13, dude. We know you're nothing. And as we realize later, he was a child of farmers, and much like a character we talked about in Ugetsu, was trying to become a samurai in order to improve his station.
Yeah.
But he does that through extreme bravado, and what a great character he is.
In fact, he's not even really hired at the end of the day. He's the seventh samurai, because he tags along. Like, just go home. No, I want to see where this is going. This is fun.
So they hire Kanbei. Kanbei brings along Katsushiro. And they start finding in this village various samurai with various skill sets. Some of them are skilled warriors who worked with Kanbei before, one of whom, mostly what he brings to it is a really positive attitude, and everyone really likes him. There's a brilliant swordsman who, in an incredible sequence, you see him dueling with some guy.
And it's a really well-staged duel.
It's great. Yeah. And the thing is, what happens is they're dueling with sticks, and it looks really close. They basically enter at the same time. And the guy says, "Ha! It's a draw." And our hero samurai says, no, if that was a real sword, you'd be dead. And I won. And he's like, it was a draw. And the guy won't, I'm sorry, I'm not going to lie. I would have killed you. He says, fine, we'll do it for real. It's like, you don't want that. And of course, they do it for real, and the guy's fucking dead. I think a lot of people in America, when they see a samurai movie, they have an expectation of what the action is going to be like. And the action is based off of American action movies or kung fu movies. The idea is that the action is going to be a whole bunch of swords going clang, 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 clang.
Oh, that's not what a samurai duel is like.
That is not it.
A samurai duel is like a gunfight.
Yeah.
Like an old OK Corral type gunfight where you just sort of draw, blam, one of them's dead.
The odds of seeing a samurai movie in which there are more than like 2 sword strokes per person are pretty slim because you're only trying to kill them.
Yeah.
You only kind of have to hit them once.
You only have death blows. You don't have blocks and parries.
It's one of the things I think is really interesting is that when you look at the original Star Wars trilogy, episodes 4 through 6, if you will, you can tell that, especially in like the first two, right, the first one, that the sword fights are way based more off of samurai films.
Yeah.
It's very slow. It's just looking for your opening because you got a lightsaber. That motherfucker is dead if you touch them.
Yeah.
Basically, that's that. It makes a little bit more sense, I appreciate, in the prequels that everything's crazier because more people have lightsabers.
There'd be more like fencing style.
Yeah, there'd be more
fighting,
skilled, like back and forth. But yeah, so like, a samurai fight is usually just one stroke and you're dead, which is why a lot of samurai movies have a lot of people fighting a lot of people. And there's a great trope in a lot of the best samurai movies, which is basically one guy taking down a small army. And you see that in the Zatoichi movies, you see that in Sword of Doom.
Have you seen the Samurai trilogy?
I actually haven't seen all the samurai trilogy.
Those are really good movies.
Okay, those are great. Like, I love great samurai movies. So, like, this is... Seven Samurai is a glorious experience for me.
They assemble the team, they go back to meet the villagers, and I think it's when assembling the team is a really exciting sequence, and it takes like maybe an hour of the film.
It's a 3.5-hour movie, by the way, and it's one of those ones where you get your money's worth. Like there's no rushing anything, but it's not because they're boring or they're taking their time. It's because they're milking every bit of melodrama out of it. You know what? Assembling the team is hard. It should be hard. It's difficult. It has suspense going on in it.
And it moves just perfectly. It speeds up, it slows down. Anyway,
and nothing quite goes the way you expect. Like when they assemble their 7 samurai and Toshiro Mifune tags along, and there's like, get away. They go to the town, the village, and the villagers don't want to come out. Why? Because those are fucking samurai.
Then they might kill you.
These aren't necessarily good people, so they're scared and they won't come out of their huts. So Toshiro Mifune, he actually he tricks them into coming out of their huts by saying the bandits are attacking and like sounding off the alarm, and everyone comes out and it's like, Toshiro Mifune is actually the one who, because he grew up with farmers, we don't know this yet, he understands like their position,
the way they think,
and he doesn't like them very much. He actually calls them out on their cowardice. You ask us for help, and now you're scared. Fuck you. And that's where he earns his place, because he actually has a connection here, and he can be useful.
And I think it's here where the film really starts to come to life. The way the samurai and the farmers sort of interact with one another, because samurai are of an aristocratic class, and they're not supposed to hobnob with low-class farmers. And over the course of them working together to prepare the village, you do realize that they can actually work together very well. But as the film goes on, we realize that there is still going to be this weird sort of social divide between the two of them, that the aristocrats will never ever quite understand the struggle and the death that these people have to face every day. That in fighting for aristocrats, that puts you in a position of privilege. This is about male privilege.
Privilege in general.
Yeah.
And because the female characters in this film are mostly minor. There's one character who, her father is afraid that the samurai are going to come in and take his daughter.
Yeah.
So he insists, he basically cuts her hair for her, and it's a scene of violence. He thinks he's protecting his daughter. Actually, he's just protecting himself and his own pride. And it's kind of horrifying. And then she meets the youngest samurai, and they start having this sort of romance off on the side. And this is something that really kind of wasn't done a lot.
In a flowery hillock that is so beautifully photographed.
Gorgeously photographed. But like what we also have here is a story of generational divides. And people, living with one set of ideals having to make way for people with new sets of ideals. But also the farmers are assholes.
Yeah,
they're the victims here, but we also find out that they've killed samurai and stolen their shit. Like it's actually like they have a lot to answer for, and no one on any side of this, with the possible exception of Kanbei and Katsushiro, who is just great and wise, and Katsushiro, who is young and naive. They all have shit to answer for, and no one is a great person, even though they might be doing great things.
And most of them are willing to face that and talk about that and say, "I'm here because I'm not a good person. And I need to redeem myself."
That's the thing. Why would you do this if there's no money in it for you? I got to do something. And this is what I do. I want to do something positive.
This is more than just trite plotting, though. This is really an important way of delving into these characters. And Kurosawa is able to give each character their due, give them their moments. He doesn't necessarily give every single one of them their plot point, but
not everyone has a huge arc.
Yeah, and it's not one of those, we have to give this guy something to do. No, they all work together. It's all really well put forth. And as they do this, we're exploring who these people are in a way that doesn't feel trite, doesn't feel rushed, doesn't feel screenwriterly. Well, it feels more directorly, if that makes any sense.
Well, it does. And I think it's also worth pointing out that, this film got in 1954. It really wasn't that long after World War II.
Yeah.
And much like Ugetsu, we are still dealing with the relationship people have between the citizenry and the soldiers and the kinds of people who would come in and attack us. And what we have here is a group of masterless samurai. They are soldiers who only know how to do one thing, and they have nothing to do. And they're given an opportunity to do something good. And there's something kind of noble about that, but they also are taking the task for it. And death and murder here are often seen as ugly, tragic things. They're shot in ways that look fucking badass. There's incredible fight scenes and sieges, and there's this whole sequence where they build fences and everything, and they plot out. It's a great action movie because they set up the geography really clearly. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing. When it goes wrong, you know why it goes wrong. Because again, there's 7 protagonists and a whole bunch of other characters, and you got to keep track of them all. And they do the work.
Yeah.
They don't slack off. They do all the work, so you know everything that's going on all the time. It's really impeccably constructed from top down.
So, and it's rich and it's deep and there's a lot on its mind.
It's got everything.
The bandits have muskets and the farmers do not. Is this a comment on Japanese modernity invading on sort of the old world? That's been said before. I found an interview once with Oshima, Nagisa Oshima, the film director, who really actually didn't like Kurosawa. And because he said that, especially with a film like Seven Samurai, the comments seemed to be in defense of an overclass and how there is always going to be this divide between the noble samurai and the lowly farmers and the untouchables, and how the classes should remain in their place. And Oshima feels that you can run into that time and time again in Kurosawa's work. And I think Kurosawa is pointing out that there is a divide, but he's also very clearly and very cannily saying that this is a tragic thing.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at those stories, Young Lovers, for example, there's a moment where that divide can be bridged.
But it's not.
By the end. And you realize that is sad that we came close to actually overcoming this, and we just didn't.
The way they communicate, like the farmers don't talk to the samurai. They have nothing to say to each other. The way they're filmed is usually the farmers are like in the extreme foreground, not looking at the samurai, while they're standing in like their full regalia, like head to toe in the back. And that shot occurs time and time again in Seven Samurai. And you can tell that we're sort of admiring the larger class from afar, and we're just sort of staring at the suffering of this other class, and there's no connection between the two of them.
Yeah.
It's really brilliant commentary. It's a really brilliantly shot action film. It's fair, good, and right that it should have begun so much that we're still living down today.
And it's so impeccable and so simple.
Yeah.
It really is a simple premise. People are in trouble. They hire talented people to protect them. It's so simple that it has been remade in a straightforward manner and even in a comedic manner many times, and it's hard to screw up.
They remade it as The Magnificent Seven, which was remade as The Magnificent Seven.
and I gotta tell you, both versions are good. I think the original Magnificent Seven is great. It's a great Western. The remake is okay. I think it got a bum rap. I think there's some really good stuff in it.
The remake's okay. I haven't seen the original Magnificent
Oh, it's really, really good. It's because the remake is, again, what they did for the American version, this was really clever, was they made it kind of an all-star affair. They had Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen and James Coburn and like all these...
Ernest Borgnine in there, too.
And no, I think Ernest Borgnine showed them in the later ones.
Oh, maybe so.
But what was weird is that when they got the Toshiro Mifune role, they got Horst Buckles. Which is no slight against Horst Buckles. He's actually really good in the movie, but he's like the one person in the cast who you're just
like a huge star.
It's just like, it's like when you're watching.
You know who I'd hire? Tony Curtis.
Well, it's like when you're watching like Ocean's 11, and it's got all these big stars: Matt Damon, Don Cheadle, George Clooney, and Brad Pitt, and Scott Conn.
And that one, or that
there was
one
a moment
guy
when Scott Conn seemed like he was going to be a thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess not.
That did not happen. Weird.
It's trickled down into B movies over the years. Roger Corman's Battle Beyond the Stars
is the Star Wars
ripoff version of that, and that's actually a pretty good movie. I like that one a lot.
It waffles between surprisingly like good effects and really stupid effects, and like some of the performances are awful, but like it's a fun movie. There's the joke versions, Three Amigos, which I'm a very big fan of. I think it's very funny. A Bug's Life is Pixar's version of Seven Samurai. Galaxy Quest is basically Seven Samurai.
When it came time to try to find the crappy version of Seven Samurai, we had a few options. Andy Sedaris, the famous B-movie auteur who hired a lot of like Penthouse Pets and Playboy Playmates to star in action movies. Well, I think it's called like Guns, Girls, and G-Strings series.
The Lethal Ladies.
The Lethal Ladies series. He made a film early in his career called simply Seven, which was the Playboy Playmate version of Seven Samurai. We hadn't seen that, so we didn't want to like commit to it right away.
The other one we were tempted to do was this David Carradine movie, which I think I saw a long time ago.
Which was also a Roger Corman joint.
Yeah, Dune Warriors.
Dune Warriors, which was it was like Seven Samurai set in The Road Warrior.
And then I had the idea, because you realize that kind of any team dynamic is kind of the same thing. Like Dirty Dozen is also kind of the Seven Samurai. So I realized any team thing kind of works. And I was like, a movie got a lot of crap real recently, and you and I even defended it a little bit, but it clearly has a lot of the same dynamic, like an older, expert warrior assembling younger warriors or other experienced warriors in order to save the day because no one else would do it. And I said, hey, let's do Justice League. And then you said, fuck you, we're watching Suicide Squad. And I'm like, you son of a bitch. We don't have to do this. We don't have to do this, Witney.
Justice League isn't bad enough.
I asked you, why are you doing this to us? And he's just like, this is the only way I know how to feel. And I'm like, oh, God. Because listen. The DC Extended Universe movies are a mixed bag right now. Can we all agree on that much, at least?
Yeah.
Can we all agree on that? Because I know some of them have their fans. We can all agree they're up and down.
Yeah.
And Suicide Squad is a movie that I think, honestly, coasts on two performances. Three, really. Yeah.
Will Smith, Margot Robbie, maybe Viola Davis.
Oh, no, who's the guy who plays Diablo? Jay Hernandez. Jay Hernandez is great. So it coasts on a couple of good performances, and I think everyone likes kind of like the idea of it and the style of it. But when you look at how crisply and perfectly constructed Seven Samurai is, as a 3.5-hour epic movie with everything you could possibly want in it, here you have a movie that's made for way more money than Seven Samurai probably cost, with a huger cast, honestly an even more fun idea in a lot of ways, and the construction is like toothpicks. Like, it's really shoddy from top down. Tell them the concept of Suicide Squad, just in case.
You realize we'll have to break it. Sorry, that's what I thought when you said toothpicks.
Yeah, Mystery Science Theater 3000, Mitchell, I remember. No, that's why I made it. Go away. Smash away.
Smash away. Oh, you're ruining it for me. So the concept is actually really fun. Although it's kind of nonsensical from the start. So we have Superman in this universe. It just destroyed a city.
And died. And then died. Saved the city. Destroyed a city. Everyone hated him. Saved the world. Then he died. Everyone's like, oh, shit.
So Viola Davis says, hey, we need to do more than just like regular military stuff in case we have another Superman who's a bad guy. Like if another Zod comes down and we don't have a Superman, we're kind of effed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assemble not just the super powered beings and the super smart people and super ruthless people. I'm not just going to get all those people. We're going to get criminals that we have something on that we can force into fighting for us.
There's a scene at the end where she gives all the information on the future members of the Justice League to Bruce Wayne. And I remember, they explain it, but I still think it's stupid. She says, like, you know, she gives all the, like, oh, you had the contact information for the Flash and Wonder Woman, and you went to the homicidal maniacs for help. What?
It's a flawed premise.
But what she says is, I would rather have leverage on people than just trust in their goodness. And I kind of get that. I think it's forced.
That's fair.
I think it's the best explanation they got.
It's a good justification, I suppose. But it's the Dirty Dozen superhero edition, where the Dirty Dozen is a film about Lee Marvin tries to get together a bunch of people who have already been convicted of horrible crimes
in the military
in the military during World War II, and says, okay, you are now my Dirty Dozen, you 12 guys, you disobey me, I'll shoot you through the head, and we're going to go on this special mission where we're going to kill a bunch of Nazis, period. You'll probably all die,
but if you live, you'll be exonerated. You'll be exonerated and you'll be fine.
And it also has a lot of like really great, like Telly Savalas and Charles Bronson,
Donald Sutherland, and it's a great movie. It's a great movie. I love Dirty Dozen.
This is the same thing, super villain edition. So Viola Davis gets not the Joker, but the Joker's girlfriend, Harley Quinn.
Yes.
Gets Killer Croc, a crocodile man.
Yeah. Captain Boomerang, the Boomerang Man.
Captain Boomerang.
Yeah.
Okay. Stop right here. You're supposed to be fighting Superman,
and you're going to get Boomerang guy,
the Joker's girlfriend who has a bat and no superpowers. She's a little nutty and she's homicidal, but that's not going to do anything against a Superman.
You got Will Smith as Deadshot, who is so good with guns that he's basically functionally Batman, but with guns. Like, he's that talented. Like, Batman has no guns, but you throw him in any situation, you know he'll be fine. I think Deadshot's the same way, but with guns.
He's not... He's a little less maniacal than Bullseye from the Daredevil movie.
Yeah, but they also have, and here's where her plan starts collapsing in on itself. Enchantress
has an evil ancient witch.
Okay, Enchantress, everything about Enchantress is unfortunately terrible. Okay, she's played by Cara Delevingne, an actor I quite like. You watch her in, what was that? Paper Towns, she's really good. I
like her in Valerian.
Valerian, she acquits herself very nicely. Here she doesn't have much to work with. She plays an archaeologist named June Moon, who we see her in a flashback, fall down a hole, see an ancient statue, and immediately pop its head off like a Pez dispenser, because she's the worst archaeologist in the world, I guess.
It's not even an accident. She
goes click.
She opens it like a bottle of Jameson, and she's just going to start chugging, and it turns out there's an ancient evil spirit. It takes possession of her body, and Viola Davis thinks she can control the two of them.
Well, she can control them because she has Enchantress's heart, which, by the way, same storyline as Tales from the Crypt, Bordello of Blood. That's what Suicide Squad is taking from Bordello of Blood. I love that.
Bordello of Blood is at least 20 times better than Suicide Squad.
So she has her heart, and she'll stab the heart to death or whatever if she tries to double cross her. But basically, she's kind of an omnipotent god who can teleport anywhere around the world. And it's just sort of like
an omnipotent god brother who she resurrects.
Oh yeah, and what happens is, like, she keeps the heart in like a secure briefcase, like the nuclear football, so the Enchantress can't get at it even if she like escapes. But she keeps like the Russian nesting doll with her evil, all-powerful brother in it in a closet somewhere. So one time, Enchantress just gets out, teleports to that closet, pops the head off, and everything goes fucking bananas.
So it's a crisis. The crisis that Viola Davis was trying to prevent is the one she causes.
Yeah, there's no this isn't,
and there's no irony there. It's just that's the way they manufacture the crisis.
And it kind of hurts the whole premise. Like, it would make more sense as a storyline if the Suicide Squad, as they come to be called, they also call Task Force X, which is also a name that team has had in the comics. If they had to do something noble, that would actually have gone so far against their principles, it might have created an interesting dramatic construct. There would have been dramatic irony to it. They would have been forced to maybe deal with decent human beings, and we'd see how kind of terrible they are, or maybe are some of them capable of redemption. It would have been really interesting. Instead, they're just helping shitty people fix the shitty problem they shittily caused.
and which is like costing people lives.
Oh yeah, so one of the first. So they do two things. These villains, Enchantress and her brother, whose name I forget, and I don't care.
Steppenwolf. Why not?
They do two things. First off, they create a swirling knick-knack vortex of death.
The blue laser shooting into the sky.
Which we've seen in every superhero movie, and it's always lame. Every time. I think it's just in there arbitrarily now.
You know, back in 2012, right as I was sitting down to watch The Avengers for the first time, I leaned over and just thought, closed my eyes and thought to myself, I really hope there's no glowing blue smoke in this movie. Mm-hmm. I just don't want there to be one superhero movie with no glowing blue smoke. The first thing that happens, a room fills with glowing blue smoke.
We have certain tropes, don't we? But the other thing they do is they start basically infecting the populace of this city with the goopy disease.
Turns them into the eye creatures from Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah, there are these monstrous people, and half the movie is the Suicide Squad murdering them.
Yeah.
These are helpless. They're not helpless, but these are victims here.
Well,
and they're just slaughtered. And it's just sort of funny that these are their these are their putties. The people the Power Rangers are allowed to kick the shit out of the putties because they're nothing.
Yeah.
But the putties were people a minute ago.
Yeah. Well,
it's kind of fucked up.
It's the same reason they always have black masks covering the entire faces of bad guys in Hunger Games movies. It's okay to shoot one of those guys through the face with an arrow. We've never seen his face. We don't know who that guy is. It could be a robot.
Probably is a robot.
Probably a robot. Anyway, they assemble this team. The Joker is around the periphery trying to rescue Harley Quinn from all of this. The only thing I really like about this movie is Margot Robbie and Jared Leto as the Joker. I actually like them both. I don't understand their relationship, but I like them both as individuals.
Well,
I'm one of the only people who defends Jared Leto's Joker.
You made an argument defending Jared Leto's Joker as this sort of new money criminal.
Yeah,
he's very brash and outlandish,
but he's clearly living up to the gangsta lifestyle.
Yeah, he's trying to live in a music video, basically.
Yeah, more or less.
And I get that, I actually think. I think some of the decisions about his overall look are at best superfluous, and some of them are just kind of dumb. Some of his tattoos are ridiculous and not in a good way.
They're clearly trying to make them both look like D'Antwoord.
Sure. Honestly, just get D'Antwoord. That would be fine. But
it would have been so much better if they just got D'Antwoord.
And the soundtrack would have been great. Oh my God. But regardless, I don't really have a problem with Jared Leto's Joker. I don't particularly care for it, but I also it's valid. I see its point. Whatever. Margot Robbie is one of the most charismatic performers we have right now, and casting her as Harley Quinn is kind of a no-brainer. It's just sort of who do you get to play Harley Quinn? Well, I hope they get Margot Robbie. They got Margot Robbie, and she's fantastic. One of the problems with the movie, and there's a lot, is the way that they handle Harley Quinn. They know she's a scene stealer, and she gets all the best lines.
Yeah.
And she's really... There's this great bit where she's in front of everybody. It's what's that voice in my head? You want me to kill everybody? And everyone looks at her kind of weird. He's I'm just kidding. That's not what they said. Yeah. That's a great bit. It's a great bit. It's a funny bit. But one of the problems is they don't know where she's at right now. When we see her in flashbacks, she is the Joker's mistress. He was a psychiatrist. He basically
somehow he seduced her.
He Hannibal Lectered her. Yeah. He Hannibal Lectered her and brought her over to his side. Then when he escaped, he gave her electroshock therapy,
which she didn't. Well, it just sort of damaged her brain essentially.
But it was already almost there, so it's really brutal. Almost every scene of Harley Quinn until the action starts is actually her being
abused
or objectified or treated horribly in some very particular way. And what I thought we were building up to from this is we're going to see an arc where Harley realizes that she deserves better than the Joker. And that's actually not what we get at all.
No, it's not.
It's actually her still worshiping the Joker, hoping the Joker comes to save her. The Joker does come to save her.
We get to see a fantasy late in the film where she imagines a life with the Joker.
Yeah, her fantasy, her ideal world
is to live with the Joker again, but
in domestic bliss.
Yeah, like as the Cleavers, like they have a home in the suburbs. They're still like dressed in their kooky outfits.
No, they're not dressed in their kooky outfits. He's got a normal face. She's got everything.
I thought he still had the green hair. Oh,
no, they're totally. I just rewatched it. They're totally normal.
Okay,
and
so
she doesn't make sense.
So what she really longs for is to sort of crack through this damage. Like, not only did she give electric shock therapy, but he fell into a vat of chemicals with her, which I guess are Joker-making chemicals.
That's the same vat that made his skin all pale and his hair green and shit. It's the same vat. That's what it is.
Yeah, all right, fine.
You're expected to remember that. I'm not saying...
No, I mean, I remember that from the 1989 film.
It's the same.
Joker...
Joker's always had that origin, basically. Okay. That's the only origin of his makeup.
It seems kind of dumb that we can have a Joker-making vat just at the ready for whenever you want to make another Joker.
It's fine. But you actually did something here which I think completely creates a misconception about the film. And one of the reasons why Suicide Squad, I think, is an ideal, quote-unquote, bad movie to talk about in regards to Seven Samurai is we talked a lot about how kind of perfectly, in like a jigsaw puzzle kind of way, Seven Samurai is constructed. And every piece falls together perfectly. And every character introduction is its own entity, a short little story. It's really, really great. And then we move on. And then everything just kind of progresses. It takes the time it necessary.
You're about to talk about the editing, aren't you?
I'm about to talk about the way that this movie introduces the entire cast
3 or
4 times, and then it adds a couple of characters at the end like it forgot. You had time to introduce Katana. You just didn't need to introduce Killer Croc 3 times. You didn't need that shit.
Katana is badass Japanese warrioress in a mask with a sword that they say is magical and turns out to actually be magical.
Yeah, which only comes up like once at the end. Yeah. Which is weird. Because here's what happens. We're introduced to Deadshot and Harley Quinn in sequences that honestly feel like they were like studio notes. Put them at the beginning because they're obviously the stars.
Yeah, well, I mean, Will Smith is the heart of the movie. The Deadshot actually has redeemable qualities. He's working to save his daughter. Save
his daughter from like just a lousy mom. She's not like kidnapped.
Well, just trying. He's doing this for his daughter.
Yeah.
So he actually has something noble in mind, and he's kind of sympathetic. Harley Quinn, we just love because she's a kook and she's funny and she's really charismatic.
And I think all of that abuse she takes at the beginning is, I think it's designed in order to make us really sympathetic towards her, even though she does horrible things. Ultimately, I think David Ayer who can be a great director. End of Watch is awesome.
I love End of Watch.
I think Fury is really great too.
Fury is good.
But here, man, if he was trying to make her like a sympathetic figure, he fetishized that violence in a way that really destroys any message you could have. It's really gross.
He puts her in these really like strippery outfits, and she's really
which could have been empowering, but the movie is so leering about it.
Yeah, like, and everybody's looking at her, and they're like, she puts on the short shorts, and everybody's just sort of staring at her. And it's like Michael Bay. It's just really gross.
It's flimsy and lousy, but. Like, so we're introduced to those characters, and then we cut to Viola Davis explaining the concept of the movie. We're going to take these superpowered criminals, and we're going to use them for our own ends. And now we're going to have a short bit where we introduce all the characters. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. Okay,
it's clumsy though because they each have their own musical cue.
Yeah,
they licensed a different pop song for each one of them, and that makes for scenes that move really quickly. But it becomes just a big pile of little tiny pieces rather than a whole.
Yeah, it's not building to anything. They're all like their own little vignettes. So there's a vignette for Killer Croc. There's a vignette for Diablo, who's a guy who can shoot fire but hates himself because he
murdered a bunch of people.
He murdered his family. That's what we learn eventually. Is that his powers he didn't control them very well, and he killed people he loved, and now he's trying on a mission of redemption. It's a good character. I'm fine with that. But we're introduced to all these other characters. So there's this whole sequence where we introduce all these characters, including 2 that we've already met. And we already had sequences introduced to. I'm like, okay, fine. But now the movie can begin, right? Then Viola Davis takes a meeting with other bosses, explains the concept again, and introduces all the characters again.
Has them display some sort of skill.
And then the bosses go, okay, I guess we need these people. Go to the prison. And so they go to the prison, and we're introduced to all the characters again. And then they take them out. Then there's the big, action thing, bad thing happens, and they have to assemble them all. And then while they're assembling them all, we're introduced to all of them again. And throw in Slipknot. Why not? By the way, this is Slipknot. He's probably not going to die first. just the guy we threw in at the last minute. He can climb anything. Great. Throw him up against God.
Now, here's what happened. Now, if you know a little bit about the production of Suicide Squad, I almost call it Samurai Squad. Suicide Squad, you probably know this, was given to several different editors while it was being shot, and new decisions were being made while it was already in progress.
That's my understanding.
Which is actually something that happened with Justice League. They were making decisions as the film was being made.
Huge event movies like this, especially if the studio is at all nervous about it, are often constructed this way.
Yeah,
it's usually doesn't this bad.
It's when you can sense it that it's a problem, and often you can see a studio note in action. Suicide Squad is nothing but a list of studio notes, and I don't see a film here.
There's no story that needed to be told.
David Ayer was making a film, and I think they were getting nervous, and they said you have to make it a PG-13 rated film rather than an R-rated film, which is a pity. I heard it was going to be R-rated. I wanted it to be super violent. It wasn't. And so they said, well, we have to start inserting other elements into it. You have to start adding more pop songs because that film, Guardians of the Galaxy, was so big with its pop soundtrack, so include more pop songs. And we're going to give it to different editing houses and see if we can cobble together different versions of the same film that you're shooting the same script of, which is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you need to have
You're not going to get one, authorial vision.
You need a voice. It doesn't need to be like, a huge artistic endeavor where someone had a beautiful dream for what Suicide Squad could be. You just need someone who knows how the story is told and tells that story.
Yeah.
And this is just shoddy. And it's interesting because you look at the other DC movies that had come out by this point in this cinematic universe. We had Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Say what you will about both films. I kind of like Man of Steel. Neither of us like Batman v Superman.
I don't like either.
That's fine. They both do have a reason to exist. Like Man of Steel, they're trying to introduce Superman in a more complicated, dreary world and build him up gradually. I think that was the mistake. They made it gradual. They should have just jumped into it. But whatever. They had an idea. They had a point. Batman v Superman was talking about these characters who should be larger than life but live in a world that's way too complicated, and they lose sight of their moral compass and they fight each other. The idea is fine. The implementation was bad.
Yeah.
Suicide Squad is a B Men on a Mission movie. That's it. That's all. You could have done more with it. You could have really explored the characters more and maybe made this really about Harley Quinn. I think even David Ayer has said the Joker probably should have been the bad guy.
Yeah.
Because there was actually a great episode of Batman the Animated Series kind of like that, where the Joker stole a nuclear bomb, I think, and in order to get the Joker, they had to team up with Harley Quinn, who is currently incarcerated. And they say, Harley, if you help us find the Joker, we'll
knock off some of your sentences.
Yeah, exactly. And Harley Quinn, with plans to escape and shit, says fine. And so it's a whole episode of her teaming up with Batman and Robin, and it's hilarious. But at the end of it, she realizes the Joker has gone too far, and she actually does come to terms with blows with the Joker. You could have done something like that, where this could have been the story of all these other fun characters, but ultimately it's Harley Quinn's sort of story about her overcoming basically Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
And realizing that she deserves better than Mr. J, that she is her own person. She just needs to define herself as someone else.
You called him Mr. J.
I'm fine with it. I grew up with her calling him Mr. J.
I watched that show. I didn't follow it as closely as a lot of people my age.
Harley Quinn started off as a one-off sidekick character. They've admitted as much.
Yeah.
She was just this fun sort of person to bounce around, fight Batman and Robin, a fun acrobat character. And then she was just, people liked her, so like, screw it, let's make her more of a character. And they came up with a fun backstory for her. But one of the reasons why she has evolved over time is because she has grown out of that relationship, that extremely unhealthy relationship. And she still often deals with that.
And so,
but like,
even though she's dressed at, like, visually, she's essentially just a female version of the Joker, but
she became her own entity.
She became her own entity, and I think in many ways she's more popular than the Joker now.
I think so too, and I think she can be a more interesting character than the Joker in that she actually
has a past. The Joker doesn't have a past.
Exactly.
He's just a clown.
So this could have been a really good opportunity to explore her. And before you say like, oh, it's an ensemble movie, most ensemble movies nowadays have a leader, have one character who mostly, like X-Men, for example, we're mostly telling Wolverine's story.
Yeah.
You know, like that's
they're all about Wolverine.
Yeah. So, or the Avengers. Well, I guess that's a little more balanced, I suppose. But regardless, they feel like a Tony Stark story most of the time. Here no one really has enough of an arc. Deadshot doesn't really do anything that he would consider out of character by the end. Harley Quinn finds a new family, but fuck it, goes back to the Joker by the end.
Yeah, like
Diablo sacrifices himself, but at the same time, he was willing to do that anyway. He would rather die than
hurt
raise.
another,
nothing changes. They stop the bad people, but nothing changes. Nothing evolves. No one goes through anything resembling an arc. And you could argue that, they're just bad, and that's kind of the story, is how people never change. That's not very satisfying, though. You need to feel like we've gone through something.
Yeah, what you need to do is have them, actually cave in and do something really noble, and then you can walk it back afterwards and say, don't tell any of my underground friends. I'd never live this down.
Or, listen, we saved these people, but while we were doing it, we actually stole all the gold from this safe.
Or something like that. Something scoundrelous.
Yeah. The people, there's a great movie that Charlie Chaplin did called Monsieur Verdoux. And it is a story in which Charlie Chaplin, it's like the darkest movie he ever made. He actually plays a serial killer. He plays a Bluebeard. He marries women, he kills them, he inherits their money. There's a scene in that movie. The movie is based around the different people he marries and murders, and it's very darkly humorous. But there's a scene in that movie where he meets a young woman who is destitute, and he just invites her in, and he makes her dinner. And he doesn't kill her or nothing. It's not his thing. She met him on the best day. Even the worst people can have a good day. And if you only know them on this day, they're not going to seem so bad. This could have been the Suicide Squad's good day, and I suppose it is. But it doesn't sell very well. They're just not interesting characters. Most of the movie is them just wandering around, just the studio backlot somewhere is what it looks like. I'm sure they went somewhere, but it looks like they could have cheaped out on it.
I don't think they shot on location.
They're fighting faceless monsters.
For a good chunk of this movie, which is pretty long.
Most of the characters don't actually interact with each other. When you think about it, does Deadshot have any dialogue with Katana?
I don't think he does.
Does Killer Croc have any dialogue with Captain Boomerang? I don't remember any of this stuff. There's so many opportunities to have all these larger-than-life personalities play off of each other. And it's interesting that it feels so empty and so padded when you look at something like Seven Samurai, which is 3.5 hours, but it feels like a razor. Everything is really tight. Here was a shorter movie, but not much. It's still a long film. It's over 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And they have all this opportunity, all of these scenes, and instead of having playing with the character
development,
doesn't mean development. Just I want to meet them. I want to talk to them. What do they talk about? What are they into? Put them on different missions other than walking to that building, then walking to that building. There are all these opportunities for them to do stuff, and instead they introduce them all 5 times.
The problem
is wasted film. That's literally wasted film.
The problem is, and I say this all the time, we're too fixated on cool in our cinema.
Which is ironic considering you said Seven Samurai basically invented cool.
Well, like I said, we extracted that from Seven Samurai. That's something that and I was going to bring this up when we got to Suicide Squad. We watch Seven Samurai, we see these noble characters doing something really great, and we get a flavor as to what those kinds of characters would become. And we see them being sort of unflappable and unfazed and kind of unkillable after a while. And they become these sort of cartoon action avatars, these distant echoes of what we saw in Seven Samurai. And as the echoes got more and more distant, the cool part got louder and louder until we start with cool and work our way backwards. And I feel when you're going to construct a film that way, you're going to do something like Suicide Squad. You're going to start with a really cool, really energetic pop music store. We're going to have dirty deeds done dirt cheap, and somebody's going to be flipping around and murdering somebody, and he smirks at the camera and letters flash on the screen describing who they are and lists their crimes. This guy's a badass. That's a cool moment. I won't deny that. It's unnecessary. It's padding, and it makes us see this guy the same way we see every single damn character in every single action movie as an unflappable badass who can't be harmed, who's going to be cool in a crisis.
And also, let's finish. Sorry.
Yeah, what we need to extract from any superhero team is their heroism, what they are capable of doing because it's hard and because they are working really hard to be good, noble people.
Yeah.
If you were going to do a Suicide Squad movie about villains in that same situation, you can play that as satire. That's what The Dirty Dozen is. But you can.
That's an exaggeration. I wouldn't call it satire. It's humor.
It's not satire, but it's sort of like a juxtaposition.
Sure.
They're kind of setting up an opposite dynamic. These are bad guys doing something noble now. And that's exactly what Suicide Squad needed to be, but because it's a superhero film aimed at teenagers, it has to be colorful, they're going to try to really, really ram in the awesome. And every scene has to be awesome. And every scene has to be a climax. Every introduction has to be really exhilarating. And it's not that it's exhausting, it's that it never starts anything.
Yeah.
It's like an engine that's constantly idling and never actually begins, and then the film ends. and the engine falls out onto the street, and you're really disappointed, and you're angry at the DCEU for the rest of your life.
The other thing that I think is relevant to that, and you talked about how the Seven Samurai invented cool, which probably an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. Like that's a trope that they helped codify in terms of action characters who are capable and unflappable. But one of the things that Seven Samurai did so well was the contrast between their confidence and their skill and the people that they were saving who actually needed to be saved. And they were morally questionable in a lot of ways, but this was a desperate situation and they were really needed. Other than saving the world, which is so big it's hard to even wrap your heads around, who are they saving? Viola Davis, who's almost evil. She's borderline evil. Like, we see her kill innocent law enforcement officers just because they didn't have access to classified information and they heard something. That's not a good person. So the actual contrast between the bad guys and the good that they're doing is almost non-existent. And it's hard to really give a shit. Because they're not actually doing anything that positive other than saving the world, which again is the DCEU. And at that point, do we want it to go on?
There's not even a moment like a Snake Plissken moment. Like, say, Snake Plissken, he doesn't give a damn about anything. He's one of those badass, unflappable Western stars, and Escape from New York's a Western. It's a sci-fi Western. Yeah. There's going to be a moment in Escape from New York where he holds a gun and a kid or a homeless guy sort of emerges from the shadows. Don't shoot. And Snake Plissken goes, nah, and he just sort of points his gun at the ceiling. Just get out of here. So he's got a little bit of sympathy.
He's got a code. Yeah.
He has a little bit of a code, and we can understand a little bit of humanity. There's no moment like that with any human beings in all of Suicide Squad.
Will Smith. Deadshot has a couple of those. There's a scene.
I guess at the beginning, where he's
at the beginning. There's a scene
with the Batman cameo.
Yeah, there's that. He actually develops kind of a rapport with Harley Quinn, where they're almost friendly. And then when Viola Davis says, you work for me, you have to shoot her, and he misses on purpose.
Oh, okay.
There's a moment where he says, "Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
We're not doing that."
Okay,
so Will Smith is the guy who does that.
I'll take it back. There was a moment.
There are moments it's fine, but they don't sell very well. But again, the overall tone is so cynical.
That's Harley, though. That's not an innocent. That's not a person they're saving.
She's a murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a person he kind of likes now over the course of the film, and I suppose that works on one level, but barely.
But you see what I mean, though. They're again. I'm not asking them to become saints at the end, but the whole point is that they do the right thing for selfish reasons, or they discover this is our one opportunity to do the right thing, but we're still really, really terrible. But at least be able to say when we die, we did one good thing. It doesn't sell that very well. It sells it really, really badly. It's just not a well-constructed movie. You can say that's again. Text, subtext, functionality. Here's the text. Here's what it says it's doing. Here's the theme that they're trying to get across. Does the story that they're telling actually support that? Not really. It doesn't really work. And it's a shame because, again, the idea is great. I like a lot of the cast. I like a lot of the characters. I think there really could have been a great Suicide Squad movie. And I hear they're supposedly working on a sequel. The
first one was hugely successful.
Very successful. And listen, they're working on supposedly they're working on 50 fucking DCEU movies. I'll believe them when I see them at this point because there's no way they have the time. So some of them aren't going to get made. If they make Suicide Squad 2, there's potential for this one to be better.
All right.
Wouldn't that be great?
I think David Ayer is a bad match for this kind of material.
He's too on the nose for it. You need someone who's a little... Because you think about badass and, anti-heroes, and David Ayer comes up because he's the guy... He wrote Training Day, and End of Watch is a very morally complicated movie in a lot of ways.
He's done movies like Hard Times, and, these movies about corrupt policemen.
Sabotage is actually, I think, a somewhat underrated film in his canon,
But he tends to work in this really kind of gritty... urban milieu where men are constantly yelling and murdering one another and competing to see who can do the more depraved thing before the film is out. And it's so gritty and so realistic that it's difficult to imagine him doing something in a fantasy context. He's now made 2 fantasy films. He made Suicide Squad and he made Bright. And
I didn't see Bright.
And that kind of gritty street realism doesn't fit fantasy in the way that in the stories that he's been telling.
Well, you look at someone like Christopher Nolan, who has a very intellectual approach to everything he does. And a lot of the stuff he does is very fanciful, but he finds sort of an intelligent way to tackle it, and sometimes to a fault. But like he interprets them in a way that makes sense. David Ayer doesn't interpret; he just spews adrenaline.
Yeah.
On it, like adrenaline and testosterone, like that's his approach. And sometimes he has something to say to that. I think Fury is one of the few World War II movies I've ever seen that I feel adequately like approaches and approximate the idea of what would cause post-traumatic stress.
Okay.
I think it's so shocking and so violent and so visceral with its viscera that it actually like it's he's really fantastic at that. But there's a point to make about that in World War II. Suicide Squad is at its heart a caper movie.
It's a caper movie that's part of a big studio-run franchise. It feels super cynical.
It is.
It's like I said, it's all studio notes. I think the cut they ended up going with was the one that came out of the same house that did the trailers.
That's a story I've heard. Yeah.
So of course it feels like an extended trailer. It's cut like a trailer, and you can't do that for 2 hours. That's not a movie.
It just gets old. You can't cut a movie the same way the entire way through. It gets tedious. You need balance. You need contrast. You need ups and downs, highs and lows, ramping things up, slowing things down. The pacing on Suicide Squad is really frenetic almost the entire way through, and by the time it finally does slow down for probably like the best scene in the movie when they're all just sitting down in a bar and actually talking for a scene, and I'm actually like, oh yeah, these are good actors, and the characters have potential, and we actually like can share, and like
way too little, way too late. At that
oh my
point.
God, like I wanted more scenes of them just talking for fuck's sake. Like there's another thing, Fury did that as well. Like there's scenes where just people having dinner, and it's just awful, and like in a good way, and like yeah, it needed more of that. Seven Samurai knew when to fucking slow it down and tell the story and let the characters do their stuff in a way that doesn't feel like we're taking too long. It's laying groundwork so that when shit actually happens, it will have weight. There's no weight to Suicide Squad. There's just nothing. It's like that line in The Dark Knight where Batman is basically torturing the Joker for information. And he punches the Joker in the head. And the Joker says, never start with the head. It gets everything all fuzzy, and then the next thing you hurt, it's not going to hurt as much. And that's Suicide Squad. It's that punch to the head, and then after a while...
throughout the
and then I'm
rest.
just like, yeah, no, I'm just in a haze, and I don't really care. That's a damn shame, honestly, because I like a lot of people involved. Suicide Squad's a great character. And it shows that there actually is a way to screw this up, which is amazing, because usually it's actually pretty hard to screw up the men/women on a mission story. Anyway, that was your double feature of the week, and we have got a poll up now at Schmoville. Again, it's April. So you get to pick a good movie, but we're going to try to get you involved in some types of cinema that maybe don't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
In communities that tend to be very geek-centric. So, next week, all of your options are classic silent movies.
That's right.
We actually get quite a few requests to cover stuff like this. So, I'm really glad that people are interested, and people who aren't interested hopefully will learn more about it.
Take your hand and point you in the right direction.
So, your options are Battleship Potemkin, a iconic Russian movie that kind of helped invent the way we edit movies.
Yeah.
Like, we had editing before this, but Battleship Potemkin sort of introduced new ways to tell stories visually. And pretty much literally every movie or TV show you watch owes Battleship Potemkin a debt.
Yeah.
Like, every single one. Like, it's insane. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is considered by some to be the first horror movie.
Yeah.
Obviously a huge influence on people like Tim Burton's classic of German Expressionism, has what is considered to be the first twist ending in movie history. It's actually one of my favorite silent films, but we'll see if you pick that. Here's one I actually haven't seen. The Man Who Laughs.
Which came out in 1929, after the advent of sound, when silent cinema was kind of reaching its peak in terms of what it could do, in terms of editing, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of special effects and makeup. Conrad Veidt plays the title Man Who Laughs, and the look, going back to Suicide Squad, very much inspired Bob Kane to design the original Joker drawings.
A guy who cannot control it is always smiling, and that makes him creepy.
He's had a smile carved into his face. It's this really interesting fable. It's pretty great.
Okay, then there's Metropolis, the first true and great sci-fi epic, upon which most other sci-fi epics owe a huge debt.
There are a lot of versions of Metropolis. I will watch the most complete one.
We'll watch the most complete version, but I would want to talk about the Giorgio Moroder version as well.
Of course.
There was a version in the early 80s that was put together by the soundtrack producer from Top Gun, who managed to put together what was basically the most complete version of Metropolis at the time, but with music by Pat Benatar and Queen, and it was badass. Like, it was a really weird experiment, and I grew up with it, and I watched it a lot as a kid. I was a huge fan. And then lastly, your last option is the vampire classic Nosferatu, a film which most people can recognize at sight, but I also find that most people haven't actually watched in its entirety.
Yeah.
And it was this early silent adaptation of Dracula, an unofficial adaptation of Dracula, which is why it was actually hard to find for a while because the estate of Bram Stoker sued. But now it's available, and it is considered a classic of the genre.
They were going to call him Count Dracula. They couldn't get the rights to the name, so they didn't change much, but they did change his name to Count Orlok.
Basically, the plot's the same.
It didn't change much. It's the same plot.
You would sue, too.
Yeah, it's totally a ripoff of Dracula.
So, yeah, those are your options. You can go to the Schmoville Facebook page, Schmoville !, and you can vote right now. And then we will pair one of those films up with a bad film, presumably one that came later and sort of didn't learn the right lessons.
We have time for maybe a letter or two. And we're running a little behind, so on letters, that is.
And we're going to do, in the next week, we're going to do a letters episode.
Yeah,
we're going to
try to catch up on all your letters, because we've been getting them, we've been reading them, we appreciate the feedback, and we've always been running short for one reason or another, for several weeks in a row.
We're adults, we're working, we don't live together or nothing, so sometimes it's hard to find the time. And also our episodes are long anyway.
Yeah, so here's a letter from Chris from Bloomington. It says, Dear Bibbs and Whitney, I love the show. In particular, your guys' idea is to do a double bill of a bad movie, then find a good movie with similarities.
Thank you.
I like the same thing, but backward. Below are a list of great movies, and I want you guys to think of a bad movie to go with these ones.
Oh, how fitting.
So, yeah, we're going to... He's giving us some great movies, and he wants us to do some quick off-the-cuff pairings.
Let's off the cuff, let's
Below
do it.
are at least... I want you guys to think of a bad movie to go with each one. I know this might feel like I'm taking ideas for future shows, but so be it. It doesn't need to be clever, it just needs to be similar in some way. Number one.
And honestly, our first reaction is often not the one we go with.
Yeah, it's true.
So don't worry about that.
Number one, The Last Laugh.
Oh, geez. What's something with like a tacked on happy ending? Like, what's got like a super bullshit mega happy ending?
Oh, that's a tough one. I can only think of like a Coffin Joe movie where it's like, and he's sitting around a table cannibalizing the protagonists, and then the studio like literally scratched into the film lightning bolts to show him getting divinely killed.
There's one. There's a movie that Peter Hyams directed called The Musketeer. It is an adaptation of. Obviously, the Three Musketeers. The idea behind it was going to be the Three Musketeers, but we're going to actually get Hong Kong choreographers to do really cool action, like in the kind of way we were seeing in the 90s. All the action's cool, the movie's kind of lame.
It was Yen Wo-ping, wasn't it?
I think Yen Wo-ping did it, but no, it wasn't Yen Wo-ping. It wasn't Yen Wo-ping. Regardless, but there's a scene where D'Artagnan is with his girlfriend, played by Amanda Suvari, and Amanda Suvari gets killed, and he was going to go fight Tim Roth. It's an awesome fight sequence. And it's very, very obvious she was supposed to be dead, because he's like, oh, you killed her! And then you hear in like a totally different tone of voice, like it was recorded in a different room, and her lips aren't moving. Amanda Suvari says, I'm not dead, please kill him. And then there's like one shot of her at the end that shows she's fine.
I'm okay.
It's so great.
Yeah. Number two. Oh, well, I guess that'll be a B feature.
Oh, Blade Runner actually is another example.
Okay,
where they was a theatrical cut because the studio didn't have any confidence. They added a mecha happy.
Number two, Jeanne Dillman.
Which one?
Jeanne Dillman. Chantal Ackerman's Jeanne Dillman.
Oh, I actually don't really know that one.
Okay. It's a very long film about a woman's day and how she is also very casually a prostitute. And it's mostly about her just going about her day doing chores and fixing meals and stuff, and there's not a lot of dialogue.
Okay. What do you think? That's on you. You know it. I don't.
Oh, golly. What's a good pairing for Jeanne Dillman? Like a bad movie that's a good pairing for Jeanne Dillman. Like just something where nothing happens. How about like a Neil Breen film?
Yeah, almost any Neil Breen film is fine.
Any Neil Breen film.
Yeah.
Tarkovsky's Stalker.
Oh, like what's like a really boring sci-fi movie?
After Last Season.
I don't know that one.
That's a really boring sci-fi movie. Look it up. Look it up. It's like Outsiders.
Okay, fine.
Number 4, Robert Altman's Shortcuts.
Oh,
What's a really terrible ensemble?
Oh, I know.
film?
Oh, hold on. I'm going to look it up. There's this Joel Schumacher movie that is.
Oh, I know which one you're talking
It's
about.
one about all the kids and they're doing drugs and all their shit is. Hold on. 12.
12.
It's all about a bunch of like rich, affluent kids doing drugs together, and they think their problems are so important, and no one could give a shit less about them.
Number 5, Ohasard Balthazar.
Which one's Ohasard Balthazar again?
The donkey. It's the Bresson film with the donkey.
Oh, I don't think it's in that one either.
Really?
I don't think so.
Oh, that is a terrific movie.
Okay, it's on you.
What's a really bad film with a donkey?
Shrek
4. Shrek Forever After. Number 6, Tokyo Story.
Oh, Jesus. What's the movie? Parental Guidance. With Billy Crystal and Bette Midler.
Oh, that is perfect.
It is one of the worst films ever made about a generation gap between parents and their kids. It's fucking awful. Ooh, that's a good one. If you had picked Tokyo Story last week, we totally would have done Parental Guidance. Oh, my God.
Number 7, The Rules of the Game.
What's
high class and low class people, rich people, poor people.
What's like a shitty...
Snobs versus slobs kind of comedy.
Oh, you know what would have been good? Murder by Death.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
that's a good movie, though. I like Murder by Death.
You like Murder by Death?
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah, okay.
Fine. Well, whatever. Anyway.
In the Mood for Love. Winter's Tale.
Yeah, okay.
That's easy. Number 9, Scenes from a Marriage.
What's a shitty...
War of the Roses, maybe? Scenes from a Mall.
Scenes from a Mall is right there. It's right in front of us.
Really terrible movie about divorce.
Yeah.
Oh, what was that really terrible Warren Beatty film about the rich people are just all having affairs?
Town and Country.
Town and Country.
There you go.
That's a terrible movie.
Good choice.
And number 10, Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie.
Ooh.
Town and Country.
Town and Country works for almost anything, really.
Yeah.
All right, give us one or two more.
That's it.
That's it?
That's his list.
No, I meant letters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Here's a letter from Cody. Dear Whitney and Bibbs, I'm glad your transition and evolution of this podcast went well for you. As someone who doesn't know the behind the scenes, it felt like a very smooth and comfortable one. I'm glad you could come along.
Thank you.
Right now it's nearing the end of month, and I have been meaning to. I meant to send this earlier, but what can I do? Sometimes life is just a squirrel in a tux impatiently tapping his acorn hat.
Ain't that the case?
I don't know what that's a reference to.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a reference to something. Anyway, anywho, I thought I'd share my favorite films of last year with you guys. The Big Sick. Lady Macbeth, thank you, Whitney, for championing this movie. It's spectacular. You're welcome.
Yay.
That is a great film. Number 8, Colossal. Number 7, Coco. Number 6, Get Out. Number 5, Ingrid Goes West, which I still haven't caught up on. I want to see that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either.
Number 4, Call Me By Your Name, which I'm loving more the more I think about it.
Okay.
I loved it to begin with. Number 3, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This film is mesmerizing. Cool. After watching it once, I wanted to rewatch it again and again so I could write an essay on it for fun. Yeah, that's a good one to analyze. Number 2, A Ghost Story. I love that movie too.
Cool.
And number 1, The Lost City of Zed. I believe this is Charlie Hunnam's best acting role to date.
I've heard that was so great, and I missed that one.
I also missed that one. I haven't seen your favorite movie of last year.
That's one of the ones that everyone kept telling me was great, and I never got around to it, and there's always fucking something.
Yeah.
It really is. It's hard.
As I was making this list, I noticed that I really didn't care about blockbusters last year. There were big exceptions like Coco, but every franchise, big-budget bonanza a la Pirates, Star Wars, Marvel, etc. feel lukewarm to me. I believe this is mostly for my changing tastes, growing towards intellectual indies, but I also feel the notion of blockbusters has changed in the last few years. I was curious how you two feel about modern blockbusters and where you think they'll go and evolve to in the next few years. Sorry, this letter is a tad long. Keep bringing the awesome Cody.
One thing I'm noticing from modern blockbusters is that we're starting to see franchises fail.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really excited about that because when you remove... Like, Transformers, like, the version of Transformers we've seen, I think that's dead. They're trying to do the Bumblebee spin-off thing, but it's from a different director. It's taking a totally different tack. It might become a different deal. I'm looking forward to the next thing. Like, when you look at something like Loading Ready Run, which we didn't care for, it's a different property.
Ready Player One.
Ready, whatever.
You said Loaded Weapon 1. That's a completely different film.
A better film.
Yeah, I would say a better film, but
like, listen, they threw a lot of money and they took a chance on something bigger. Like, if you're going to throw a lot of money at something, give us something we haven't seen. You don't have to just strip mine our childhoods. You can try to give the kid something new. And even you can do that in different ways. Like Black Panther, you could have just told any superhero story with Black Panther.
Yeah.
And instead Ryan Coogler brought Afrofuturism to a new fucking level that we've never seen on that budget. Yeah. You're showing us something different. I want something different, and I'm starting to see some different things, and that is exciting.
We need a variety of voices in cinema. Biodiversity can only ensure the continued health of the medium. And the voice of the teenage boy needs to end. I'm terribly sorry to all the teenage boys in the world, but you've been pandered to for a good long while now. And not that
saying we need to stop telling your stories, but maybe 90% of them shouldn't be about the same type of person.
Exactly. So the way big blockbusters, they all tend to be made the same way within certain pockets of like filmmaking epochs. And right now we're in this really overblown, super special effects driven version of the blockbuster.
Yeah.
As new voices enter into this, and I'm not just talking about Ryan Coogler doing a superhero film and like giving us this really exhilarating Afrofuturism. As more women and more LGBTQIA plus filmmakers, and as more non-white filmmakers enter the marketplace and we get this new variety of different stories, we're going to find audiences responding to a lot of different kinds of things. And blockbusters are now, it is hoped, going to come from unexpected places. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be able to be set up and paid off in the same way, which means as more voices enter, studios are going to have to take more chances on new, different, strange kinds of ways of telling new kinds of stories. Well, that's what I hope the future will be.
Right? I mean, like, listen, we've got all of these perspectives that we haven't seen on this scale. And I want to see people with a different idea of the world or a different perspective on it or a different interpretation, different themes they want to explore, given the scope that Spielberg has, given the scope that the MCU has. And then we're going to see something we've never seen before. When you think about all the things that inspired people to make a film like Loaded Weapon 1, like Ready Player One, there was a desire to see shit they hadn't seen. Now, they're all influenced by other things.
Yeah.
You know, Indiana Jones came from the tradition of Gunga Din and King Solomon's Mines, but they wanted to do something that had never been done on that level before. Star Wars, we're going to do Flash Gordon on a level that's never been done before. Like, I want to see it from different eyes, a different perspective. I want to look at the clouds from both sides. There's so many stories left to tell. Using a lot of the same genre stuff. Like, we're not going to all, like... It's going to be actually, like, potential to be... Like, everyone can appreciate it because we're going to be using a lot of terminologies that are still in the lexicon, storytelling-wise. But just looking at it from a different angle is going to be a complete wonder. And then someone's going to come along and do something literally no one's ever thought of before.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's only a matter of time. It only happens once or twice a generation. Like on the scale of a blockbuster anyway. But every once in a while...
it'll strike.
There's a film where it's just like, holy shit. Like, remember when Tim Burton's Batman came out? And everyone was like, holy shit. German Expressionism blockbuster?
This is a weird idea.
And it worked. People loved it.
Arguably great. I love it.
People loved it. It was incredible, and no one had seen it. And honestly, we're still living in the world Batman made.
In a lot of ways.
Tim Burton's Batman there's a straight line drawn from Tim Burton's Batman to the superhero movies we have today. Even more so than Superman the movie, which felt like its own different thing.
If you're looking for the variety of voices and the interesting perspectives, it's always been there. Mm-hmm. It's just not been in the middle of the gigantic blockbuster mainstream. This is why the world of indies is always so fascinating for many critics and many audiences. It's why you go there. That's where all the new ideas are.
Yeah.
If you're tired of the old crap, there's your perspective. The film you're longing for has been made. Mm-hmm. It was just made in a tiny budget with a tiny studio off in an art house somewhere.
But they're out there.
You have to go out there and find them. And
that's one thing critics can help with.
It's what critics can help with, but I think what a lot of people are longing for is those same kinds of voices. Like, there are plenty of queer films, like indie queer films out there. Where's the $100 million queer film that millions of people are going to see? Love, Simon came close. That's why a lot of people are touting its greatness, even though the protagonist is a wet blanket. A lot of people want to sort of push this into the mainstream and make sure that the mainstream reflects that kind of diversity. But even if you are dissatisfied with the boring sameness of a lot of these big action films that are all typically made kind of the same way, you can find the salve. It's all out there, and we're here to give you the recommendations.
And also a lot of other critics are as well.
When I say we, I mean all critics.
I'm just saying, don't listen. We love that you're listening to our podcast. It's really, really great right now. We are but two voices in a sea of fabulous perspectives, and they're all out there.
Yeah.
So go searching. They're all wonderful. We need to wrap this up, but thank you, everybody. You can email us, criticallyacclaimedfans@gmail.com. Again, we're going to do a proper letters episode, at least like an hour and a half, just to catch up a bit and give an opportunity to give you all as much of a voice as we can, because this isn't... We end every show by saying everyone's a critic, and we mean that. Your voices and your ideas matter. Just not everyone makes this their day job. So we want to give you your voice, and we will real soon. Next week, we're going to be doing a great silent movie, and we're going to pair a piece of crap next to it. So you're going to go to Schmoville ! Facebook page, and you're going to vote for that. That is up right now. Remember, we're on SK Plus YouTube channel, as well as the iTunes
feed,
Schmoes Know feed as well. You can also listen to us every single week on the Canceled Too Soon podcast, which is not on this particular podcast network. It's its own thing.
That's our own baby.
But it's also on iTunes. It's also on Stitcher. You can find it around. On that show, we review television series that lasted only one season or less. We just did a big, long review of Almost Human, starring Carl Urban and Michael Ealy. The greatest cop with robot partner show ever made, I think it's safe to say.
That at least we've encountered.
We haven't seen Holmes and Yo-Yo yet, but pretty much. And then next month, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of crazy pilots that have never been picked up. And we're also going to be debuting a whole bunch of pilot episodes of bonus podcasts that we'll be offering exclusively to our Patreon subscribers, but the pilots will be free. So
we're constantly doing this.
We've no lives.
If you want more of us,
there's so much.
There's big slices of us cake to go around.
We give and we give, and we happily do so, because everyone's really, really great. Thank you for listening again. We'll be back next week with reviews of new movies as well, including, what do we got here? A Quiet Place. You Were Never Really Here, which I'm just going to tell you right now, fucking phenomenal. Like, really great. And it's depressing, but it's good.
Dude, spoilers.
And the new comedy Blockers, which has been getting really good reviews, which is kind of surprising, so I'm really excited.
Hey, remember when Central Intelligence kind of surprised us?
Was a pretty good movie, right?
Storks was okay.
I didn't see Storks.
Bad Moms was okay.
I didn't see Bad Moms either. You've seen more good comedies lately than I have, but whatever. Maybe it's great.
Again, those aren't great films, but when you expect it to suck and it's okay, that's kind of a miracle.
Badass. So we got a bunch of cool stuff coming up. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Check out all the other shows on the Schmoes Know iTunes feed and SK Plus YouTube channel. And we're on Twitter at William Bibbiani.
I'm at Witney Seibold.
And that's about it. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And never forget, everyone's a critic.
I want to go to the midnight show. I'm sorry, what?